Okay, hello everybody.
Oh, hello. I was looking at it and said, yes, we are already live. So we're gonna have a awkward silence in the beginning. That is very
Okay.
spooky.
No, it takes a little bit
Ooh.
until
That is
YouTube.
that is characteristic, right?
Yeah, live streams have that problem. Okay, so this is our Halloween special, and we have some guests. I'll start by introducing the guests. Probably, if anyone's watching, I don't know, you'll probably know them, but still, we'll have some introductions. I'm not going to introduce myself or Sylvia because that would be silly. If you're watching this channel, you probably know us. So Judd is the best game master in the world, according to some sources, including ourselves. We have played with him, and if you have watched our live plays, you have also met Judd. Shadow is also the best game master in the world.
Unless you listen to Shauner, but oh wait, you can't. So
Oh, too soon.
hey,
Well, who
I
knows?
just talked to his family. I don't think they mind.
It's Halloween, so it's probably
Hey, who knows?
Hey,
he's watching.
That'll be the night we can get that last word in before uh, you know he goes to his eternal reward.
And also Mark, who probably is the best game master in the world, but I have never played in a game mastered by Mark.
We are waiting.
Yes, we
No
are
I
pressure.
waiting.
promise I will
No
get
pressure
around
at
to it.
all.
I promise. Yeah. Otherwise, I just shit post on X. But hey, yeah.
Yeah, so you
Um,
are the OSR dwarf on X.
yes, that is true. So I'm loving the background. Witch
Yeah,
hat.
it's not. It's a special background for today.
You
It's
need
not
to do
our.
this for the game sessions if you can. For example, for Darker, I don't know if you can put the
Yeah,
cover of
yeah.
the book.
Yes, we can. I didn't do it before because sometimes it's probably distracting. I don't know, maybe. But okay, yeah, we can start doing that.
Why not?
Okay, so the theme
yes.
today, obviously, since it's Halloween, it's horror, or in movies, or in games, or in whatever you want to talk about. If you whatever it is,
So
just as
I have a list of questions that I asked ChatGPT to do because I forgot. I said I was going to do a list of questions, but I forgot about it. So while we were joining, I was like, "Well, let me ask ChatGPT," and he actually did some potentially interesting questions. But I'm not going
You're
to
giving
start with the
you're giving
questions
us a
right
peek
away.
behind the curtain.
Yeah, because that's very aggressive. Because we are honest whenever we use AI. That's also another topic
including.
for another conversation.
So just for starters, Halloween in Portugal is not. Um, well, it started to be kind of a thing years ago, but I guess it will never get to be like it's in the US. Probably because our suburbs are more vertical than horizontal, so people live in buildings. So it's not really.
But we
It
do
would
have a tradition similar with we on the tomorrow on the 1st of November. It's All Saints Day, also called as well Day of the Dead. And people normally they go to the cemeteries to put flowers in the graves of their family members that died. At least we hope that if not, they will not be in the cemeteries.
Yeah.
But also we have a thing that on the 1st of November, kids go knocking on the doors and asking something that is called bread for God.
But also
Literally translates.
that has kind of gone out of fashion.
Yeah, well, when I was living with my mom, they still did it when I was but it was a poor neighborhood, and I think they did it because it was a way to get things. So, but in a way, similar to trick or treat, because
Yeah.
you go knocking on, but it's not on Halloween night; it's in the day after.
Meanwhile, I think kids started doing that, but I don't think it's stick that
On
that.
Halloween night, they will say, "Go away, you are not in
Yeah,
America."
people aren't expecting that, so it's not it doesn't work here. But I know that probably where you live, it's It's probably a thing. Not right now because it's not night yet. For you, it's just the afternoon right now, right?
Yeah, about 2 o'clock my time.
Yeah, it's 5 p.m.
It's too early for trick or treat, right?
Yeah, it usually starts about an hour after sundown or so. The parents feed the kids, but more and more now, we're starting to see people do what they call trunk or treats around here, and it's like they go to a parking lot of somewhere, and it's they open the tailgates up of their cars or their hatchbacks, and they kind of do candy there. It's just a way for the parents to kind of keep an eye on their kids, and so yeah, they kind of centralize the community a bit. I don't know if that's very popular outside of heavily populated areas, but it's a neat idea.
I gotta say though, having your kids get candy from strangers in cars just seems kind of weird. Although where I live, in California, it's pretty much Halloween every day if you go out in public.
Yeah.
Why did I think you were in New Mexico for some reason?
Oh dear God! Oh, I'd literally rather be in California than New Mexico. Just saying. But I'd rather be in Texas than California. So, fingers crossed.
Well, I didn't know you were in California. That's
Oh yeah,
news. I never know.
Yeah. I hate every second of it.
I'm sorry for you. Yes.
Yeah, and
It's okay. It's okay.
You've gotten
I
used
was,
to
I
it.
was actually born here. I've moved around a lot, traveled a lot, but this is where my son's going to school right now, and he's doing really good. So I'm gonna stay here for that. He's got a year and a half to go, and then
Get
Good.
the first bad report card and straight to Texas. Right?
he's never had one. A straight A
Hasn't been
student.
an issue, right?
No. He started out going to a dual immersion school where they speak Spanish half the day and then English the other half. So he's actually had a miraculously good education via the public school system.
That's cool. I went to a school where we spoke English half the day and Portuguese half the day, so I just skipped the second half of the day because Portuguese
So-
is crazy.
maybe you should speak Portuguese in the rest of the
Oh no, let's.
stream. Okay, so you can do
Oh,
that some-
what? Yeah, how do you say the Day of the Dead in Portuguese?
Dia
Well-
de Finados.
Yes, Dia de Finados.
Okay.
We don't have a name for Halloween, so it's Halloween.
Do you guys? Is it similar to Spain and such, where you have like the people dressing up in the
Not
macabre
really.
outfits and
They don't
face
have that
paint
in
stuff?
Spain, I think. They have that in Mexico. I don't think they have
Oh,
it
that's
in
just
Spain.
Mexico.
I think they have something. Yes, I think they have in Spain as well. But it's
But that colorful thing that you know from the day Dia de los Muertos, it's a lot stronger in Mexico than it is in Spain because I
Yeah.
never saw it associated with Spain.
And it's even stronger in
Finados,
California for obvious reasons.
yeah. Finados is a old word for dead. So because dead é morto, muertos. But we say, or it's also Day of All Saints because that's the name of the holiday.
So does
I
that
don't know.
imply that they're dead, but they might be moving around still or spooking people out?
Hey, Cal.
But we have a holiday tomorrow. Do you guys have a holiday tomorrow?
We don't. No,
Yes,
we don't.
exactly.
We don't have either day. We don't have Halloween or
This is a-
All Saints Day.
I think this is a Catholic.
Yes, it's a Catholic
Yeah.
holiday.
You are correct, sir. It is not something we do, which is ironic because
Yeah.
ever since the Irish brought over Halloween in the 19th century, and it's kind of turned into this enormous American holiday, but nobody ever got a day off for it. Kind of sucks.
That's
Yeah, it's because all the
American
fun
culture.
happens at night, right? So I mean, everybody
it's
can
kind of
still
cool.
work in the day.
Yeah, but you still need to sleep off the next day.
Yeah,
It's not. It's
Mr.
not a
Holland.
real part of American culture like Black Friday is, right? Like,
no, we don't get that
key
day off
moment in
either.
founding. When the founding fathers first celebrated Black Friday and they knifed a native for a toaster half off. So the celebration of our unique culture.
Okay, so the introductions are over, so we should start talking about the subject, I think. And
Sure.
I think Sylvia is the one with asking questions tonight.
Yes. Do you want me to start with asking questions? Yes. I'm
Yeah.
going to ask.
Let's
I'm going
start.
to say, what team do you prefer? No, I'm joking. I'm not going to be. I'm the.
What team do we prefer?
What team? No. What team? What team? What? But you don't know what the teams are.
Yeah, I'm going to be with Arsenal no matter what the sport. I just like that name. It implies they're about to do some violence.
No, I'm going to ask a question about our films because we're going to talk about our, not so much about Halloween traditions. But this
Yeah.
one, we're going to start. What's the first horror movie you remember watching, and did it scare you? And I think I already know Miguel's answer to that one, so it's going to be the last one.
I can't be sure about if it was the first one, but yeah, I have a story about that. But
So
can
we can
go
start
by-
with
Are you going to call on Sylvia?
Yeah, I'm going to call. Okay, I'm going to call on Mark.
Okay.
He's stalling.
He's thinking
Yeah.
about.
He doesn't want to say it was Rainbow Bride, is what it is. He's like, well, it was
Yeah. I'm not
Scooby
actually
Doo on
seeing
Zombie
the message.
Island.
I actually don't know what was the first horror movie that I watched.
Neither do I.
Well, so I guess the question is which is the first horror movie you remember
The first horror
watching?
movie you
Right?
remember watching? Yes, that's the question.
That's better. That's a better question.
Oh, okay. Well, to be honest with you, that's difficult to remember. It was probably one of the Universal horror monster movies. If I think about it very carefully, I think it was The Wolfman.
That's a pretty good one. I mean, it's not full Lon Chaney; it's Lon Chaney Jr., but you can't,
Yeah, I mean that really is the oldest one I remember.
Not one
And
man.
I'm trying to remember even where I watched it. I think it was at my grandparents' house.
And did it scare you?
Yeah, second part.
When I was a little kid, yeah. It was the transformation scene that caught my attention.
Yeah,
I thought that was absolutely the coolest thing when I was a kid.
I think I remember that. Yeah, not bad. I think for the time.
It was practical. It was what they call, practical special effects, time-lapse photography. They had the poor guy strapped down in a chair so that they could glue yak hair to his person.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Oh, we've all been
And-
there, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, when they did makeup back in the day, they did makeup.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I'm not gonna call on everybody. Just
The
the
first one I
Then we just
remember,
go.
the first one I remember being a big deal was, we went to the theater. My dad took us, and it's probably the first it's almost certainly the first R-rated movie I ever saw too. It was called Saturn V or Saturn III, and it was a Harvey Keitel and Farrah Fawcett and Kurt Bridges movie.
Kirk Douglas.
And-
Oh,
Kurt Douglas, yeah, sorry, and
Kirk Douglas.
and I'm sure the only reason we went to see it is because Farrah Fawcett is briefly unclothed in it.
Oh,
But it ended up being a fairly decent movie. It was pretty scary too because the big bad guy is a robot that has like a human brain or human brain material in it, and so yeah, it's kind of straddling the horror movie sci-fi. But since the robot goes crazy and starts trying to do people in, I feel like it counts as a horror movie. And yeah, the second part was kind of scary. But
And I'm
more
going to
scary
do-
was what was that really, really attractive woman doing with that really, really old guy. And now that movie gives me hope.
so
I was just-
It is seriously inappropriate, and I love it.
I was actually just talking about that movie with some friends of mine on my channel. Yeah, that was just
Is it Saturn 3?
the most unrealistic thing about the movie.
So who was the guy that was dating Farrah Fawcett?
Kirk Douglas.
Oh, Kirk Douglas. Okay. I
I
don't
mean,
think
he
I.
was like 30 years older than she was at that point in time, I think. I mean, he was still, don't get me wrong, he was Kirk Douglas, so he was still
Yeah.
muscular. He was still in good shape. But he was old enough to be her dad.
Grandfather.
Close. Close.
Hey, what's up, Squirrel? What's up, Anon? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was
hello,
weird too
everyone
because
out
the robot didn't really have a head. It had like a stick with a camera on it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
That made it
really-
even creepier in a way, right?
In a way, yeah. It was.
And I'm going to just say to the people that are watching, you can put it in the chat. What is your
Oh yeah.
what was your favorite? You can answer in the chat, and we will show your answers.
You can play along at home.
Yeah.
Yes, you can ask a question.
I actually don't remember what was the first horror movie that I watched. And I should, but I think I had a thing. So I loved horror, but my mother didn't want me to watch things that were bad for me. So I kind of have a hard time remembering what was the first horror film that I watched.
So yeah, by your air quotes and bad for me, I take it you interpreted that as children's television, right? You're like, no,
Yeah. She
children's
couldn't,
television.
and she controlled the book that, oh, you're reading a book that's not for your age. And I was like, what's the problem? Years later, I understood why it was not for my age, but not at the time. It's like, why are you being a bitch? Just let me read the books.
She was like, honey, put down the Communist Manifesto. You're like, no, I'll rise up and seize the means of production. We've got to do
Okay,
something
I
about
can't
the
really
girl.
remember which was the first horror movie I saw because I watched lots of horror movies when I was a kid. But I do remember that one had some kind of. I remember it. The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
I was about the same age as the main character, so I get well. The thing worked, and it's a very good movie. So I remember it, and so
But that one scared you.
that one scared me. Yes.
So
Not-
when you saw it, were you scared that that sort of thing could happen to someone, or that you thought
Not
it might
really.
happen to you?
No, not really to me because I was. My family wasn't religious, and so the devil possession thing was really just strange. But for some reason, well, it's a scary movie, right?
I like to ask people that because I get a bunch of different responses. Like people when they watch that movie, they're either scared that such a thing happens, scared that it could happen to someone they know. But yeah, anyone that is scared it could have happened to them tend to be very, very interesting people.
I think what I found scary about it is because even if it wasn't, probably it wasn't the first one, but it had that realistic look, right? It's a normal family, people were very normal, and what happened wasn't that was strange, but not entirely strange. She wasn't turning into a zombie or something like that. It was just doing strange things. So yeah, it was that probably.
What makes horror horror? Is that's the kind of question that it raises. If
Yeah, for
you
me, I
don't,
think the worst things are maybe those that are realistic. Probably, I would say that. Of course, that depends on everybody's opinion, but I think realistic stuff might be worse.
I think the best shorthand for what makes horror that I've ever heard is that, you know, in suspense and thrillers and stuff, you worry for the protagonist, but you kind of assume that everything's going to work out in the end. You just don't know how. In horror, you just don't know if it's going to work out at all, right? Like the stakes and the tone are such that you think there's a good chance that the protagonist isn't going to make it out of this.
well, so Lovecraft in supernatural horror in literature said that It's the fear of the unknown. I have some questions about that because he was a modernist.
Yeah, well, he said that was the strongest fear, certainly.
Fear
And-
was the
and-
strongest emotion. I also question that. But he was a modernist. So let's think about it. Can you say there was any such thing as horror literature before the 18th century?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think like folk tales and stuff like that. You know, the stories of Baba Yaga or
Most of Aesop's fables and Grimm's
Mhm.
fairy tales were just that.
Yeah,
were
they're
just-
pretty awful.
They were
Yeah,
just
but were
scared
they
the living
actually
daylights out of
horror?
the youngins so that they would, behave, listen to their elders, do the right thing. Don't take gingerbread cookies from witches, things like that.
But gingerbread is so tasty.
Take Hansel and Gretel as an example. What is the story? The kids are kidnapped by the father doesn't have any money, so they abandon them in the woods. They are kidnapped by a witch that feeds them, so then she can eat them. That is an horror story.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a radical suggestion. I'm going to suggest you can't really talk about horror fiction in the modern sense before Horace Walpole's Castle of Otranto, which is also the first Gothic story.
Yeah,
And let me explain why. Unless you have a notion of the supernatural, you can't write supernatural horror. So the problem with some of the stories you guys are talking about is for the people who told them, they weren't about anything supernatural. They were about the world they lived in.
That's true.
Children did get banished into forests. Children did starve. There was even the horror of cannibalism in famines. Children would be eaten. But that was the reality. When Walpole wrote that story, he wrote it as an implicit Enlightenment critique of the pre-Enlightenment world. Oh, here we are. We're rational. We're living in the best of all possible worlds. Look at this terrible medieval story of these terrible people doing terrible things.
Okay, so he admittedly did not. He intended for it to be a fictional supernatural event, because I mean the story's pretty. Well, it's pretty bizarre. It's like basically a giant helmet shows up one day, right?
Well, but see, even that. Now, see, here's the other element you see in modern horror, which is the tendency to explain away the supernatural. So, Manfred, who is the hero of the Castle, hero is not the right word, the anti-hero of the Castle of Otranto, he's really the villain, believes that the helmet falling on his heir is a magical, and here's the classic line from Gothic, an ancestral curse. It's a curse on the family. But Thaddeus, the peasant, knows that it just fell off the head of the big statue in front of the church. So that's you see that as well. You see that in modern stories like Stephen King. Look behind the most Stephen King novels, and it's like psychic powers in 1970s spiritualism wrapped up in supernatural garb. Firestarter.
I was going to go with Pet Cemetery as an example here, is because it's like the whole Native American concept of a burial ground where it's a sacred place and you don't touch it because of fear of what might happen to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that suggests one element of horror, because what from Castle of Otranto or Pet Cemetery or the Call of Cthulhu is the notion of transgression, right? So first you have to have an idea that there's a supernatural that is distinct and apart from the natural. So
Mark, I'm going to say that I think you had it before, modern horror in literature. You just didn't have it in literature. But if you go probably to oral tradition, you already had it. The scary stories that kids and people tell
scary
themselves.
stories, I agree. Yeah, I'm just saying it wasn't supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
It was natural.
But it's still horror, though. That's the key thing with here. It's like Red Riding Hood. That's a horror story.
It's a frightening story.
But horror doesn't have to be supernatural, exactly.
The way Red Riding Hood is phrased in a lot of modern retellings, they tone down the horrific aspects of it, but there's some bad stuff in there that if you Well, I mean, they did like 2010 or so something, a like proper version of it where they actually like go through the whole motions of, this person got killed by being ripped apart. And oh wait, we're actually going to show the gore. And
So
not do like the Looney Tunes thing where you see the big bad wolf with the giant distended belly because he ate someone. No, 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 no.
Right.
The person is
Well,
not whole after he ate.
Yeah, they're not coming
What,
back.
what was the wolf in that story? Because wolves don't speak, and they don't,
I,
dress
I
up
think-
as your grandmother.
I think the wolf is the guy that your granddaughter dates that you don't like, right?
Okay,
Everyone has told you. Everyone has told you that guy's trouble, but you keep inviting him in, and now he's
Okay.
going to ruin everything and kill your grandmother.
One thing that was an interesting bit of commentary back in the day when that movie was new and people were talking about it and comparing it to things like Underworld is that the story of Little Red Riding Hood is not a natural wolf. It can't be because it does things that a real,
Right.
actual living creature would not do. It had to be some sort of a supernatural entity that looked like a wolf, but wasn't really a wolf.
in the
Well,
context
do
of the
you-
original
do you
fairy
feel
tale,
that-
it wasn't supernatural though.
Do you,
It was
do you
part
feel
of the
that way
natural
about
world.
It wasn't-
fables as well? Like, are they assumed to be supernatural? Is it like the Usagi Yojimbo of ancient times?
Well, see, that's one of those things that's an interesting bit of distinction, though, is that by our standards, it's supernatural, but by their standards, it was not. Because to them, werewolves were real and a thing that you had reason to lock your doors at night to keep out. To us, it's a supernatural entity, but to them, it was not. So simply calling it a wolf was adequate for their understanding of what was being spoken about.
Well, they also didn't clearly distinguish whether animals could or couldn't talk in certain instances. I mean, we sometimes forget that before the 18th century, many people lived in what I would call a magical universe. We're reverting to that, by the way. We've talked about that elsewhere, how if you look at what's happening in the postmodern era, they are reverting to a magical universe. You have huge numbers of people who have silly ideas in their head and they think they're real and they live their lives on them.
Well, that's part of postmodern.
That's scary.
Right? Like, there's no objective.
That's darker.
truth, so-
That's darker
That's
RPG.
scary.
That's the world
Exactly.
of that book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
scary,
you're
that's-
right.
Well,
But,
you
I
know
mean,
what's
ours-
funny?
Sorry, go ahead.
What's
Jeff.
funny is that Robin Laws, who is very much a leftist, also does it in his game, The Esoterrorist. You know, they're basically postmodern reality hackers that are screwing up the world by imposing their, goofy cognitive dissonance on the people, and it's allowing evil to get into the world, which is a funny thing from that side of the aisle, right? But
I never
you know,
I never read that one.
even a broke clock is truthful twice a day, right? So,
But that is the idea, because horror is the fear of the unknown, but the unknown doesn't have to be supernatural.
Yeah.
So
Well,
supernatural is just a type of horror.
Yeah, my favorite horror movie, we didn't get that, is actually
Yeah.
The Creature from the Black Lagoon. There's nothing
Yes.
supernatural about that, but it's terrifying if you think about it. That there were these.
It's an inhuman monster that has very understandable motives in life, yet it's still not human.
Right. What
And-
is it exactly? Is it one of our ancestors? Excuse me, or is it aliens, or is it as I like to think a deep one from
Yep.
H.P. Lovecraft?
Could be a cryptid, I guess. I don't know. Maybe.
or a kraken, or not a kraken,
Or a deep one. Yeah, the deep one sounds good. Yeah.
So there are supernatural implications in The Creature from the Black Lagoon, though, because there's
Really?
this notion that it is a survival that cannot be explained. But you're right. There were not originally hard lines between science fiction,
Well-
fantasy, and horror. It all used to. In fact, Lovecraft himself called it weird fiction.
Oh,
It was
that reminds me of something that's very interesting to remember about old stories from the old pop sci-fi days. It's that a lot of the in-universe lore is told from an in-universe perspective of people who us as an audience have no actual reason to believe have a 100% perfect comprehension of the world around them. So what they're telling us about what they believe to be true might be 100% wrong.
Well, that gets you into the unreliable narrator
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Which
but
is
like
actually
in stories like The Creature from the Black Lagoon, the unreliable narrator is the only one who has any backstory information on it.
Yeah, true enough. So, again, for me, when I look at traditional legends, classic ghost stories, fables, myths, there are horrific elements to all these things, and I don't disagree with that. But I tend to think that when you're talking about supernatural horror, what we tend to think of around Halloween, stories of vampires, stories of ghosts in old creaky houses, werewolves, zombies. There's something there from Haitian religion. Uh, okay, that's funny. So,
That's my little brother. I'll let him live.
So
Hey,
anyway,
nobody's judging you, Shadow. That was pretty creepy.
Care Bears are dwarf approved. No,
I still think the Teletubbies are scarier.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
So,
true because they don't.
they
make
actually
any
are
sense at
scarier.
all.
Yeah, unless
We don't know
you're
what
free.
their agenda is because they can't speak.
So,
Did you ever see the that video someone did explaining why the Teletubbies are an eldritch nightmare?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I did.
they are yeah, they are terrifying.
All you have to do is see a production photo of a Teletubby standing next to a grown man, and you realize you are not dealing with what you thought you were dealing with. Once you have a scale for those things, you're like, these need to be destroyed. Like everything inside you will tell you
Definitely,
that.
definitely. You really need
England sort of just backs into making nightmare fuel, right? Like, when they try to make spooky things, you get Day of the Triffids. When they just accidentally make a kids show, it is just terrifying, brain tearing, horror.
nothing like low production values to produce unintentional fear and horror.
Right. Peppa the Pig. Peppa the Pig is our punishment for barbecue.
That's the strange thing, because in Portugal, most movies are low budget, or at least compared to Hollywood.
All movies are low budget.
But all are low budget, and we have no horror in Portugal in terms of even literature.
We had one or a zombie film. Remember?
Just
It was a short film. Yeah.
film.
My friends and I were talking about that the other day. How horror doesn't seem to be all that prevalent, along with fantasy and science fiction, outside the states for the most part.
Well,
No.
Yeah, in Europe it's kind of
Spain has a very or had a very developed horror industry. Not fantasy, but horror.
well,
kind of
what about
recent.
this theory I've heard? I've heard that countries that had dictatorships don't have horror because it's subversive, right? And so, Russians didn't do horror until they got out from under the thumb of the Soviet.
Well,
Like
that's
everything was either
I
underground
before
or
someone just
Might
sent me
explain something.
a Russian horror movie from the '60s, though.
see.
Hey. When I was a kid, I watched Soviet animation, and it looked like horrific. So I don't know. They did some-
intentionally or unintentionally.
I'm not sure, but it was horrific. Yes.
Well,
That's
the old Russian folk tales from like back when the Tsars were in charge, those were interesting stuff that Hans Christian Andersen would think twice about reading.
Yeah, Baba Yaga is weird and terrifying in equal measure.
I mean,
Aren't
they've got
these-
more. That's one of the ones that gets passed around in North America most, but they've got a lot of them that are just no, thank you.
So there's an example of an old legend that is recycled through modern treatments, and it gains a horror edge that it didn't necessarily have. I mean, yeah, it was a spooky legend. It had elements of fear, but then you take it into like a modern adaptation, and whether literary or a movie adaptation, and suddenly it just changes. It was a bad enough situation for the folks of the Franklin expedition to be trapped in the ice. But then somebody gets a hold of the story in The Terror, and suddenly over multiple episodes, things that hey, they didn't happen. But it becomes horror of a whole new kind. Yeah, so that's the other thing is, I sometimes wonder if that's another aspect of looking at the past through a modern lens, and that's that old part of the Gothic, right, of Gothic fiction, where you're basically looking at the past through a modern lens. If that isn't a part of modern supernatural horror as well, you're reinterpreting the past through a modern lens and making it more terrible or more weird than the original story or original events.
Well, for a modern example of a horror thing that I'm just going to use as an example, not really important what it is Alien. In the original movie, fear of the unknown was part of dealing with the creature. You didn't know how to fight it. You didn't know what it could do. And thus, several situations in the movie, the people who are trying to fight it get completely blindsided by it having an ability they didn't know it had. And a lot of the classic horror has that aspect to it where you're dealing with creatures you don't understand, and thus that makes it worse.
It didn't help that the corporation was doing everything it could to make sure that the aliens survived at any cost.
Yeah. The evil behind the scenes.
Which to me, as I grew up, became the scarier aspect of that movie than the poor xenomorph just trying to get lunch.
Well, the scariest thing was that Paul Reiser played that character in Aliens 2, right? And he, up until then, he had always been this affable, funny guy in everything you had seen him in. And then you're like, oh, wow, this guy is horrible. And then, yeah. As a kid, that was one of my grow-up moments where I'm like, wait a minute. Like Hamlet, a man could smile and be a villain.
Or seeing Jim Carrey play a supervillain in Batman.
I mean, I never cared for him, so it was not that big of a shocker.
His flair for dramatism actually worked quite well for the character he played in Batman.
He played bad guy in Ace Ventura 2, really.
That was after he was in The Mask, though, so it wasn't really a stretch.
Yeah, The Mask does sort of open that door a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, both of them were horrible.
Yeah. That was the Joel Schumacher Batman, right? So it was just it was just.
I'm not sure if I don't think I even watched that movie. Well, not the whole movie, just a bit of it.
It's one of those things that often gets memed because it has moments where the Riddler does things like, "If knowledge is power, then a god am I." And it's one of those lines where in real life you would never be able to take anyone seriously saying that. But coming from the Riddler, you're like,
Yeah, that movie, it's clear that Arnold was having fun making it, and almost no one else.
Arnold was just chewing the scenery.
Yes, and is Stokey in equal measure.
Wait, you're talking about the Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze? That was a different movie.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. The movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger had Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy as the bad guys.
Oh, Poison Ivy.
The one with Jim Carrey had the Riddler and Two-Face.
Okay. Well, then
So
I
I would say that's
apologize.
not
I
exactly
apologize to the makers for
that's
bringing
not
them.
exactly the type of horror movie we were talking about.
Yeah.
That's an horror movie, but
that's a horror
It's
accidentally.
horrible. Horrible.
Horrible, yes.
Exactly, the horrible movie.
Well,
Although Poison Ivy's abilities actually do kind of lend themselves to a horror theme because of the weird, twisted abominations of plants that she can create to menace people.
Especially
they
if you
also
read.
had Bane in that, right? Like Bane was just this big idiot, and he was
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a
bomb.
super mook helping Poison Ivy out.
Yeah.
If you read any of the old, what was that line of DC Comics? The separate line they had that had like Black Orchid and things like that. Those were actually more in line with horror, if you ask me.
Oh,
Was that Vertigo?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That it was right on the tip of my tongue. But yeah,
I think Vertigo was chiefly a way to let Neil Gaiman do whatever the hell he wanted to.
Oh, and they did.
Well, also there's the whole idea of that DC had seen that Todd McFarlane's approach
Bonk.
towards deciding what was appropriate for comic books was profitable because people actually bought them.
well, that's how comic books almost got their start back in the 40s and 50s with EC Comics. That was for me. I didn't watch as many horror movies because I had spent more time reading the old EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, things like that, which were for me, because it was more in my mind, it was even scarier than seeing it because my imagination would take over and add things to it and feel it more, I guess.
Yeah, and EC
I'm not
was
sure
very
if
transgressive too. Yeah.
I'm not sure if Sylvia and Miguel have heard of this because it's a German comic book and I'm not sure if they're still in print. Called Gespenster. I'm not sure what the English translation of that word is, but it was basically like some of it was kind of like Scooby Doo level horror, but some of it was like serious werewolves eating people level of stuff, and a lot of it had like really really creepy elements to it, where it's going into the whole like thought processes of what would you do if you were in this situation, and not so much just going straight for slasher flick thing. Because like one of them is a horror movie where the horror is the knowledge that the guy who's the hero of the story is as good as dead, and it ends with him dying in the arms of his wife because he got exposed to some sort of weird toxic soup, and the horror that he needs to deal with is one, knowing that he's dying of the gift again that he'd absorbed, and that he needs to stop the people that created it. It's very, very interesting because it's like one of those things that it works as a one-shot horror story, but not really as anything ongoing. Yeah.
It didn't really sound that. I don't know that strikes me as like a horror. It's more
Yeah,
like
that sounds
again, horror.
like what was it? 24 Hours? Was that the name of the where the guy is poisoned and he knows he's got 24 hours? He's got to solve his own murder,
Yeah.
basically.
This was different because of the fact that it was kind of sort of like a super zombie kind of thing. Where,
Oh, okay. So he's got some stuff going on.
like Toxic Avenger then.
kind of, yeah. Except that he knows he only has a few hours left to live.
Yeah, and Toxic Avenger knows he has a 10 movie deal, so
Exactly.
He's made.
But then I'm going to ask another round of questions because what is your favorite type of horror? Because just for this conversation that we're having, we know that we're considering horror different because there's different types. So I'm going to start with Shadow this time.
Honestly, I tend to go for the things that have less of the supernatural to them because it's a little over the top. For me, the scariest movie I've ever seen was Fire in the Sky. and it doesn't necessarily count as a horror movie. You guys remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Travis
Okay.
Walton story.
Right. The last, because 90% of the movie, there's nothing scary at all. It's that last 15 minutes when he's on the ship, and all the things they do to him. I can't think about it without wanting to cover my eyes. From that one scene, it's not supernatural. It's maybe science fiction or however you want to look at it, but it just seemed more feasible than most of the supernatural things out there. Or maybe Jaws. I know I don't know if that also qualifies, but then again,
Well, Jaws is definitely horror.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's again, yeah, a shark is a part of the natural world.
That's
I mean, that's something that eventually becomes apparent across.
It
Yeah.
could have been the first horror film that I saw, because I saw it
Yeah.
at the birthday party of a friend that was older than me. So it could have been the first one that I saw, actually. But what is scary about Jaws is the suspense, that you don't know what's going to happen. Is the shark attack? Will shark attack people, the little girl, or not? And that's where the horror part is for me, is on what you don't know, right?
Well, part
Yeah,
of
I
it
think,
is it
being a
doesn't
gamer-
really act like an animal, right?
Having
It doesn't.
been in the RPG business for so long, the supernatural is just been so much experience with it and whatnot. It's just
Yeah.
lost its edge to it, if you know what I mean.
In
Well, and
vampires are
I
not
think
vampires
media's done
anymore.
that to us too, right? We're so used to stories about it that we don't even think about it as, if it actually happened to one of us, right? That we saw something truly outside our wheelhouse, how would we handle it? But yeah, we've gotten pretty used to a lot of the tropes, I guess.
I don't know about
So,
you guys,
yeah.
but I've been doing this for over 40 years. So, another zombie, another vampire, another ghost. It's completely lost almost any element of real fear. Now, getting my players to feel that's a totally different thing. That's actually easy.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like with the Resident Evil movies, where they came up with a sci-fi techno explanation for having zombies, and it's nothing supernatural at all. It's just
the T virus. Well,
But
it's
this is
sort
the
of
thing-
implied even in Night of the Living Dead that it's
It's a
something, it's some sort of disease or something.
well, it's something beyond human understanding in Night of the Living Dead, and the fact that people don't understand it is part of what makes the situation so odd, I guess you could say.
It
People
kind of
don't
has
know
a
why it
superficial explanation, though, right?
Yeah. I
Well-
thought in subsequent movies they do explain it. Yeah.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
in the original Night of the Living Dead, there is identified some sort of an energy wave that hit the earth, and the dead that it touched would come back to life. But when this was gone, and it stopped, but people had no idea what it was in the first place. They just knew that it existed.
That sort of reminds me of one of the weirdest movies, like Maximum Overdrive. That movie.
Mm.
It's the whole idea is that aliens come and they start taking over our machines to kill us, and so they're cars and they surround a diner and I'm like, well, the diner has machines in it, right? There's a scene where a Coke machine kills a guy, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, if they can do that, why are they even bothering, right? Like, they could just shut all our machines off and wait.
And it's
20
one of those
minutes and
things
we'll all be
where
dead, right?
It's one of those things where you really have to wonder if the aliens are doing this because they are is it a genuine military conquest, or is this their idea of having fun?
Yeah, it's just laws. Well,
Well,
I also want to know
it's
what
Stephen
kind of
King in his
technology.
cocaine era.
Yeah, I want to know what kind of technology puts a truck in fourth gear, right? Like, what is that? Is that telekinesis? Is that, what do they, Yeah, it just
That's ripping off Steven Spielberg. No,
and Knight Rider.
And Knight Rider. It's Stephen King in his cocaine era. It's interesting. I enjoyed his earlier novels and stories from the late 70s. But it's like the more famous he became, the more it became like a retread. It was variations on the same theme, whether it was psychic powers or machines coming to life. It's like he would take a short story concept and expand it into a novel. Or, in certain cases, about the horrors of being famous.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, I think horror people are victims of their own success, right? The best horror writers are writing when they're at their worst. Lovecraft was constantly poor and constantly afraid of everything. Poe was constantly poor and in poor health. The second you get famous and giddy, you lose your horror edge. And so because things don't scare you anymore, you have people for that. So I think after a time, your ability to share horror is gone because you feel so little of it after a while.
Oh, it's like that old saying: "You write what you know."
Yeah.
Stuff. It's like what you feel on a daily basis impacts what goes into your writing.
Yeah, and that means that Stephen King, if he was smart, would write his next novel about a guy that trolls people on Twitter, because he is right there. He is in the middle of that, right? Like, he would just have to have some self-awareness to realize he's the bad guy. But,
I only read 2 books by Stephen King, and it were the different seasons. So not exactly horror. And the first book of the Jesus, what is called there is sci-fi, possibly the Tower something.
The Dark Tower.
The Dark Tower. I like the tales. I hated the Dark Tower. I didn't understand shit of it. The other books, I was like, I already watched the movie. Why the hell I'm going to see the film? Especially when I heard that Shining really sucked and this book was a lot better. Well, I don't know, but I really like the film as a film. So if the book is supposed to be better or different, maybe I don't want to read it.
Well,
So
personally, I think. Sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say real quick. I think Stephen King's best work was Shawshank Redemption, and he should have gone more in that direction. The movie was just. I was blown away when I found out it was Stephen King. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is a lot of writers say that if they don't feel inspiration, they'll just shelve the project and go with a project that they do have inspiration for. I mean, that's actually part of the reason for a lot of the more popular anime series going on hiatus, is that the guy who is the series creator just like, I'm going to wait until I come up with a good idea for the next story arc and not rush it. And
and then the companies that need product for that, let's do a filler arc.
or just with a lot of them, instead of doing a filler arc, they just like show reruns for several years because people are actually willing to watch the reruns.
Let's have a hot take to create controversy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that Stephen King movies benefit
Stephen King.
They take Stephen King and they boil him down in a reduction and take out all the 70s music references and all the, pages after pages of I get paid by the word, purple prose. And then they get to those good 40 pages of horror content. And then you give it a director.
Most Stephen King movies are very, 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 extremely, very much bad. And
especially the ones he had any involvement in.
Yes.
My friends and I have a simple response to most Stephen King movies. Almost every one of his movies can be solved with a .45 caliber bullet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
they should shoot the writer. And I think that's.
But no, I mean,
Get rid of him.
let's be frank. Who better understood the real horror going on in King's novel, The Shining? King or Stanley Kubrick?
Kubrick.
Well, that's a
Kubrick.
bad comparison because both of them are kind of, off in La La Land somewhere, right? Like
Kubrick
just
and
in
Jack,
different directions.
Jack Nicholson. Kubrick and
difference
Jack
is-
Nicholson on his side. So
Kubrick was a genius. Stephen
I,
King.
I,
was-
yeah, I will
Gary
guarantee
Westwood.
you. I will guarantee you, Stanley Kubrick used to show his movies to people, and then he'd go, "Did you understand the ending?" And if they said yes, he would cry and like, "Burn it, burn it! We can't skip this movie."
Oh boy.
So here's the thing about Kubrick's The Shining. He read King's novel and immediately saw the self-insert. He understood that the protagonist was really a version of King, and that's why King was so sympathetic towards him. So Kubrick took the knife to it, and instead he portrayed the main villain, the real villain, the only one who's able to actually touch anyone, in a very different light. I think that's why King hated Kubrick's version,
Sounds
because he
good.
immediately realized that Kubrick was holding up a mirror to him and he didn't like what he was seeing.
But he had an excuse with that. He hired Jack Nicholson. You don't expect him to play a nice, normal guy.
I've seen Nicholson in movies where he is actually playing kind of a goofy, nice guy. But you're right, he's kind of typecast as this kind of weird, lunatic, creepy guy. Yeah, you're
And he
right.
does that very good in The Shining. Yes.
Well, that's why I brought up Jim Carrey earlier. Is that most people think of him as a comedian, but he's able to do horror and other kinds of dramatic well too.
Yeah, I think when he did Man on the Moon, that kind of broke him out of the typecasting. So.
It also just about wrecked his life and career.
Yeah, well, you got too method, right?
Oh God, method acting. That's something that probably just needs to
How
die.
dare you besmirch the craft? Apologize, dear sir.
Method acting.
We're 4D. We are 4D
Everyone here-
fictionalizing.
So anybody here prefers and will not take that against you, and you can also say in the chat, Shining the book or Shining the film. And even worse, I would say that awful
TV
miniseries
show.
that Stephen King did. Yes, the real Stephen King Shining. I saw that and it was awful.
I would say the film, but I really wish they had done more with Scatman Crothers because that character knows more than anyone else in the movie, and we don't get to spend any time with him to figure it out, right? Because he's on the plane, he's like, "No, there's some crazy stuff going on. I better head back to save that kid." And the kid's like, "Red Rob," and you're like, "What? What is going on with this?" Yeah, and we needed more Scatman Crothers, just like in Transformers.
I think that was one of the reasons that I didn't read a lot of Stephen King books. Was people said, "Oh, The Shining, the book is a lot better than the film." It's like, nah, I don't really believe it.
I read a few, and they all seem like the same book, so I just gave.
Okay,
it.
see, one thing that I've noticed for people who actually like Stephen King's books as originally written, is that they're the kind of people who enjoy the act of spending multiple hours reading a book.
Multiple hours. Like
I would
long
truly kill for the luxury of being able to do that.
like Los Angeles phone book, A through M hours of reading a book. Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed that, but the book needs to be worth of it. For example, I like Clive Barker a lot, but I would say that his short stories are better because these novels,
Yeah, much better.
they are too big. And I'm like, why didn't you
Hellbound
add
Heart
the
was
editor said, just
It really
go
was.
straight to the point?
Yeah, horror
that is
is
actually-
the short stories, I think. 'Cause
Exactly.
You have to get to the punch.
If you have a horror
Yeah.
novel that is this big, there's something wrong with it.
I mean, that's like Lord of the Rings. The reason that works as such a massive tome is that it's not actually a single story. It's a collection of like 100 smaller stories that are woven together into a tapestry.
But that also needs world building and horror.
Oh
Using
yeah, and
Yeah.
and he actually had a separate book he wrote just for the world building stuff.
In
So
this,
here's another hot take: Peter Straub or Stephen King?
I think I
I
read.
never read Peter Straub, but I would say Peter Straub.
I would
Ghost
probably like it
Story
more.
is scarier than anything I've ever seen from King. To me.
Hmm.
First time I saw it, it's like, holy crap, that is scary.
You know,
I think that's fair.
of the modern horror creations that are like distinctly modern but also scary stuff. One of the most interesting to me was Sadako
Hmm.
from that Japanese movie called Yuan, which in the U.S. was released as The Grudge,
Hmm.
where it's this entity that can crawl out of your TV
Oh,
while
I thought
you're.
that was the ring.
Hmm.
I thought the grudge
Oh,
was the hair person, right?
Ringu,
I might be getting the two mixed together. Thing.
Yeah, it's the
you are.
same as it's the same author, I think, or director.
They're
Yeah,
very
but the
similar.
entity is not exactly the same because in the grudge is related to a grudge, right? Like a curse in the place, and in
Yeah,
the ring
yeah.
is connected to the film.
Well, in
That's
Japanese horror is unique from Western horror. In Western horror, you have to transgress in some way to open yourself up to evil, right? In Japanese horror, you just have to be in the wrong place, right?
Mhm.
Like someone else's problem becomes your problem suddenly, you know. And
as an interesting example of that. The Heisei version of Mothra, the first movie in that series, there's this monster called Desghidorah, which has been sealed away under an old growth forest in northern Japan somewhere. Some guy running a logging truck runs over the stone shrine that was erected as part of the magic ritual used to seal Desghidorah under the forest. Well, he doesn't know what it is. It's purely an accident, but he dies because Desghidorah eats him and kills everyone within a 3-mile radius.
it is a
so
culture that
Japanese horror is
desperately wants you
interesting.
to be careful about everything you do.
Well, Japanese horror is
Have any of
interesting
you guys
because
have any of you guys seen the movie The Audition? I believe it's another Japanese horror movie. Less supernatural though.
that's more slasher horror. Yeah,
You think so?
slasher movie.
I think I've
Well, I mean, it involves dismemberment, right?
Right.
Well, that
So-
slasher does count as horror. It's just a
Yes,
different.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think so, but I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure
this
if
guy's-
it's or not.
directed several things. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
It's pretty gruesome.
I should check it out.
When she takes the wire to the guy's ankles, I believe it is, and just starts like one
Yeah,
of those
I
chain.
mean, it's body horror. The
Yeah.
Japanese are very good at body horror. I mean, they have that one about the guy who basically starts absorbing metal parts into
Oh,
his
yeah,
body, and
The
it's
Iron
just
Man,
painful to
I forget,
watch.
takes
Yeah,
it-
it's
yeah.
it's painful to watch because you can just
Uh,
imagine how much that hurt. Ugh.
you mean Meatball Machine? Because that's kind of what Meatball Machine does.
Yeah,
is that
Tetsu,
there's this weird alien force that causes people to start turning into these weird. They're not really cyborgs. That's the screwball part. Is that they're just like golems, but they're now a mix of flesh and machinery.
Is anybody getting static from
Yeah,
our?
yeah, you're
little
getting
bit,
a bit
yeah.
of
Yeah.
static, Mark.
I literally couldn't understand anything he just
My
said.
internet.
well,
That's
he
the-
was saying that it wasn't supernatural. It was just like some
Yeah.
alien thing
Yeah.
that just turns them into a weird mix.
Yeah, maybe-
Also,
Yeah.
part of what was
gets back.
so screwball with
Yeah, you have a lot of static. It's hard to let.
what made Meatball Machine so interesting though is the fact that it's a very, very gruesome sort of mixing of flesh and machinery. It's meant to make you be like, no, thank you. I don't want that guy.
Yeah, I think they've even said that, like, they were like, well, we got this stop motion idea, but the way to get revulsion is to have rusty metal touch meat, and just that will set off your disgust filter almost immediately, right?
And let me do
yeah,
an insert. That's New Flash.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, by the way, well, not yet. We will be working on a new Flash that is new and not Ratchet.
Old New Flash.
A new version of New Flash.
Because Miguel wants to do a layout with the bigger format, basically.
Yes, and getting some of the body horror part probably.
More upfront.
More of it, yes, and less Ratchet.
All right.
Well,
I think
Ratchet in the sense of
I think the next time I run Wretched New Flesh, I want to do more Burroughs stuff too, right? Like, have things that just actively don't make any sense.
yeah. Well, that's what I like
surreal.
in horror, weird horror, like Burroughs, David Lynch, that kind of thing. I like that. It's not really
Surreal.
horror,
Okay.
but surreal horror works.
Well, it's been fun, but
Especially in role.
So I'll see you guys later.
I'm still having some issues
Yeah,
with
we're hearing a lot of static.
I think he said he's going to.
Yeah, I said I have to leave because we have family stuff this evening. So see you later.
Okay.
Ah.
No, actually, you're better now.
Well, happy Halloween.
Now it's better.
Happy
Happy
Halloween.
Halloween.
See you
Good
later.
seeing you again, Mar.
All right.
But
hit us
that was
with
the
next
question was exactly what is your favorite type of horror? For me, I think because we got sidetracked. I think I like for example, I don't mind when you see gore or the obvious monsters. I like it, but it doesn't scare me. I like psychological horror when sometimes you don't know if there's something supernatural or the person is just going insane and imagining things. I think that is the type of horror that works better for me. And I remember this because Miguel was saying surreal, and I know that is his favorite.
Well, that's what I like. It's not scary, but it works.
Yeah,
It
I
works
like surreal too. I think.
in kind of especially for a role-playing game, it works because people are not expecting anything, so it will surprise them. It won't scare them. It will surprise them.
Like, I want would you include something like Jacob's Ladder with that?
Yes.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, almost like
And
metaphorical
that one is
horror
also
in a way.
scary,
Yeah.
maybe because it's visually it's also
Mhm.
probably scary, maybe. But yeah, I think it can be scary. But even if it's not scary, it can be surprising. If you are playing a role-playing game, people don't know what to expect, and that's
For the players, it is
More
right.
thought provoking, right?
yeah.
Yes. The players don't know what to expect, and they maybe even be scared because they cannot understand the situation, and they are scared for their
Scared,
character.
scared for the character because something might happen at any moment, and no one can expect whatever it's coming. So it's
And
think
also, they
it's-
cannot expect the Spanish Inquisition.
of course
Never.
Absolutely.
I would say, yeah, metaphorical or surreal horror is mine too, because I like when the good horror makes you think about something in a different way, right? Because it turns it into a monster or whatever, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, that's a
Yes.
classic.
Depending on when you catch it, it is fear of communism, it is fear of losing individuality, fear of consumerism, but really it's just cut all that out. It is fear of missing out, right?
Mhm.
You are somehow different because everyone else is participating in something you're not. And then you find out that you don't want to participate in that thing, right?
I remember that
So
from
now, yeah.
That's one of my all-time favorites.
I may be an outlier. When I think of things that really scared me badly, I think of The Exorcist. I think of Ghost Story.
Oh, yeah,
Ooh.
Ghost Story is good.
I think of,
that one.
I
that
think
one blew
of Death
my
Tunnel. Minor film, but yeah,
Well, what was
that
the
one
third
will have
one?
you. Death Tunnel.
Oh,
So that was the
yes.
one they made at the Waverly Sanatorium. It is not a big budget
Oh
film.
God. Okay.
I think of the Blair Witch Project.
Mhm.
Back before everybody understood it was just a fake found footage film.
Yeah.
Genuine Supernatural just still has the ability to make me feel really creepy when I go outside at night to bring the trash cans in.
What'd you think of Rosemary's Baby?
For me, it was more weird than horrific. So
I agree with that.
there are people in the world who are a part of cults that do things like that. I mean, was the baby the child of Satan? I mean, one of the things is at the end of Rosemary's Baby, you're left wondering. Because again, and we've talked about the unreliable narrator before. So she's in this building. It's got all these people. Her husband's part of it. She's just dragged into it. Yeah, there is an element of horror, but the irony is that there are real cults that do things like that. We had a very infamous example in Jonestown in 1978.
I remember
Nobody's made a horror of that yet. They probably could. The closest
probably
you
still
came-
too soon.
Well, they kind of halfway did it with one of the Poltergeist movies. Remember, in one of the movies, they went ahead and introduced you to the guy who'd been like the cult leader who took all those people into the cave and they all just died there in the darkness because he told them they had to. I'm trying to remember which of the Poltergeist movies that was. The original Poltergeist movie scared me. That was creepy.
I think they've done some.
It scared me
some
because I was
decent-
young.
I think they've done some decent cult movies like Master of Illusions and Drive Angry. Oddly,
What about Stepford Wives?
Now, see, I think that if I were a liberal, that would have scared the hell out of me. As I was a conservative, I was thinking, well, damn, they're based.
yes. I want one of those robots, man.
Well, in the original novel, it wasn't even robots.
Right.
It was a local group of men who had discovered chemicals that they could administer to the women. And it's like, that was if you read the story, that was the real horror of it.
We tried to watch the first
Oh my
version
God,
of the
these
movie.
right-wing men are turning us into trad wives.
We tried to watch the first version of the movie some time ago, but I think we ended up not watching because the quality was really bad.
Did
was like a
anyone watch
VHS.
that? Did anyone watch that Olivia Wilde movie that was kind of like
No.
that?
Yep.
It looked really, really bad, and of course, she
directed
her little
it?
tour, her little tour,
No.
about it made it sound like it was garbage. So
I would never watch something directed by that person. Like, no.
There are
she
things I
looked good in
watched
Tron Legacy.
that I watched that are obviously parody, and I still enjoy them a lot, like Sharknado.
Or
really-
the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mocking a kind of horror trope, but it does it in a way where it's really funny. And you enjoy watching
That what is the name of that Polanski film about the vampire killers?
Fearless Vampire.
Fearless Vampire. I was going to say The Brave. It's not Brave.
That one is
Well, and I
good.
liked John Carpenter's
Oh, yeah.
Vampires.
That
Dude,
one is.
that movie.
I like that
From the
one.
moment they
James
put
Wood
the
was
tow
awesome.
hitch on it and drug them out into the sunlight, I'm like, I'm going to love this movie. Like these
James
guys are
Wood was
player
awesome.
characters.
That one could be
Yeah.
a ratchet thing. Those guys are all bad.
Yeah, those vampires are because that's the thing that we're talking previously. Is like the monsters have become pop stars. The vampires
Yeah.
are pop stars, so they're not
Yeah,
not
not
scary
yet.
anymore.
Well, and I think they were intentionally going against the Lost Boys there, right? Because when he
Oh,
when he
yeah, I was
talks
just
to the
thinking the
new
same thing.
priest about like these guys aren't these prissy people that you think they are. They're creatures that kill people, right?
And you have that other Until Dark, Near Dark.
Near
Mhm.
Dark.
Yeah, it also
That-
shows Gritty,
one,
ugly, bad
And
vampire.
that's the family of vampires, right? Or the group of
Yeah, with
vampires.
the-
I
the
like to
scientific-
think of that movie as the actual fucking monsters.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably
That is probably the perfect movie to play with that game because
Yeah.
of how visceral it was.
and makes sense. Vampires should be like that, at least in modern movies. Dracula, okay, he was an aristocrat, and that makes sense. But in modern movies, the vampire should be like that, not an aristocrat anymore. It makes no sense anymore.
Yeah, the best part in the book Dracula is when they take out one of his coffins, and he catches them, and he's just like, "You guys with your faces all like sheep's at a butcher's. You think you've stifled me? I'm immortal. I will make your grandchildren feel my wrath, right? Nothing you do to me matters." It's a really cool moment because it's basically a Victorian guy getting a villain speech, right in front of everybody.
What do you think? What do you guys, speaking of Dracula, think is the most accurate Dracula movie?
There's a lot of debate. Almost none of them are fully accurate, but I think the Frank Langella gets closest.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. I quite like that one. Yeah,
I
it's
forget who
probably
the director
closer than Coppola's probably.
Yeah, although Coppola is called Bram Stoker's Dracula, then he goes into that crazy romance thing that is not in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bram
that's
Stoker's Dracula was almost there, right? Like the first half or so was
Yeah.
pretty close.
beginning
Like
of it.
like all the cast of characters was right, and then the ending, I'm like,
Except
what?
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves almost.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What was with the red armor? That always threw me off. It was like you didn't need that.
Yeah.
that-
Also,
that-
he's
that
not a
part of the
vampire
beginning.
yet, so why does he have red bat armor, right?
Right.
Yeah, that part is a little bit strange, but well, that's
When
was
he goes
very
into the love
stylish.
story, it just ruins it. Yeah.
It did capture one thing from the novel, which was the sense that Dracula had been overtaken by time.
Yeah.
That is a key theme of that movie. And you do see that in the novel where they make use of modern technology against Dracula. He's still stuck in the 15th century in terms of his understanding. He travels by boat. Well, they can travel across the continent on a train much faster. So that aspect of it they did capture, I thought. pretty well.
It's kind of ironic too because his bumper sticker on his coach says the dead travel fast, and everyone beats him to wherever he's going. Like everyone, it is pretty funny in retrospect. But have you seen Shadow of the Vampire? It's a movie about the making of Nosferatu.
Yes.
Except the idea is that Max Schreck, who was like this big method actor, who never appeared to anyone in the film as anything other than the Nosferatu. The idea is that's because he can't. He's a real vampire.
He's a real vampire, yeah.
Yeah, and they're asking him like, "What did you think about the book?" And he's like, "It was very sad. It was a very sad book to me because this man was a noble. He was used to having servants, and now he's making bread for this Englishman that's visiting me. He's pouring wine. He's doing things that people used to do for him centuries ago. And yeah, he's living in this shadow, and the man doesn't appreciate it. He has to drive his own coach, and I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense,
That's the sadness of that, the tragedy of the vampire. He's not going to have influence anymore. He's an undead, so he is in the margins of society.
And they try to do the hip vampire thing. I guess the best version of it is the Hunger, right? Because if you're going to go hip vampire, why not David Bowie, right? And that may be. And then I guess the Lost Boys to a degree too was that. But in the Lost Boys, it's never clear how old they are, right? They're probably fairly recent vampires.
Yeah.
Except maybe for Keanu Reeves.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland's character. He may be older than the rest of them. But yeah, the older you get as a vampire, the less good being a vampire is. It's never good, right? Because you still have to kill people and do all this horrible transgressive stuff. But yeah, once you get super old, yeah, you're in a world that doesn't make any sense to you. I mean, imagine how we feel about Zoomers, and then multiply that by 10,000 years, right? Like you literally, no one speaks the language you grew up with anymore, right? Like, you know.
Whoever
remember
wrote
reading-
Vampire
remember
5th
reading-
edition wasn't thinking about that.
There was a comic book that was like an anthology of different vampire stories, and one of them was like Dracula 3000 or something like that, where Dracula's. Yeah. You remember that one?
Yeah, it was a novel too, I believe.
Where you know the technology was just you know way leaps ahead of where we have it now. That would be even harder for you know, Dracula to deal with all the modern conveniences and things like that. Just, you know, take out your cell phone and just blow their mind.
I think, and I'm going to regret saying this, I guess, but I think Anne Rice got it right. Or, you know,
I was
like,
thinking that, yes.
she was like, you know, you'll go through these phases, right? Like nothing will make sense, and then you'll just buckle down and figure the world out, and then you'll be okay for a little while, and then you'll get old again, and nothing will make sense, and you just rinse, repeat, you know, and you have to go find some French boy to teach you to love the world again, right?
Well,
But Vampire
you know,
imitated that, right?
in the original novel, which I think, to be frank, was so much better than some of the things she did later.
Oh,
She
the
kind of
Mummy's her
understood-
best, I think.
You know, I haven't. That's the only one I haven't read. But Interview with a Vampire, I thought she grasped it. What happens when you are an undead who preys on human beings? You have to live in darkness. And yes, you can live forever, but do you want to? And in the end, that's kind of the lesson. It's that they're all fading. There comes a point where they simply go off and find some hole to throw themselves into, because there's nothing in life they want anymore, because they can't experience life. They can't have families. They can't have children. They're just
They
these
are
dead
stuck
things
in
walking
their-
around murdering people.
And they are stuck in their time. And I think in the other books, when she tells about some of the older vampires, that becomes even more obvious because they are stuck in their area. They cannot really adapt to the modern world, like she was saying, because that's alien to them.
Well, and the other thing that she does in the first novel that was brilliant is he still has the human need to confess crimes. So he is talking to the reporter more or less knowing that he is creating a problem for himself, right? He's almost writing a self-delete note by encouraging people to come after him. And that's when Lestat's like, nope, got to fix this. He's making a problem. We need to...
Well, that's because Lestat was
about
immoral.
halfway through, the reporter, if he believes the story at all, has to be thinking, I am now a liability to a lot of very powerful people.
But then
I'm not gonna
they
live.
turn the reporter into a vampire.
Oh,
Which is what the
that right?
reporter
Someone else,
wanted.
Armand, another vampire, is not one of them, is the little boy. That is not a little boy in the film because it's Antonio Banderas, but it's supposed to be a teen boy. Turns the vampire, the reporter, into a vampire. And I think he kills himself because he cannot handle being a vampire.
Yeah, well, you know, I never worried too much about the Armand casting because when you have a chance to have Antonio Banderas in your movie, have Antonio
I like
Banderas
him.
in your movie, right?
I liked him, but when I actually read the book, and I think later, and that he was supposed to be a Russian airborne teenage boy, it kind of makes it weird.
So I
If-
think the
if-
thing there is that the narrator of Interview with a Vampire still has his conscience.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really want to become a monster, and he feels badly about it. Lestat, on the other hand, is just evil. He's kind of your classic vampire. He doesn't care. He's immoral. It doesn't matter to him. If he has to take life, he takes it. He couldn't care less. The one great sin was to try to take his life. That's the only thing that will cause other vampires to kill other vampires, right? Is if you try to kill a vampire and you fail, you've violated the rules of their community. And then they'll all come against you because their immortality is the only thing they have left.
But if you read, and this is
This
another
sounds like
thing,
a great
because
idea for a role-playing game.
if you read, Wood already did that. I would like to do a vampire game because I was, of course, I loved Anne Rice vampires until to a certain point when she became too crazy and Lestat became a superhero. But when you see the second book, Vampire Lestat, you will learn that actually Louis is not a really trustful narrator. He's telling things from his point of view, and he doesn't know the whole story. He doesn't know what happened to Lestat before. That is kind of interesting. Maybe he's not
Lestat
this much of a monster.
Yeah, the more you learn about Lestat, the more sympathetic he is.
He
is very standoffish because he was an aristocrat's kid, right? So yeah, we're back to that. You're stuck in your time sort of thing.
Exactly.
So, on that subject, you become a vampire today. You're in your 20s. What's the world going to be like for you, right? Like when there's holograms everywhere and everyone's, going to space and you're still like looking for the dankest memes. You're like, oh, I used to have the dankest memes.
So what about sci-fi horror?
I like it, but I like sci-fi. So, you can tell any story in sci-fi and it keeps the trappings of both,
Well,
If it's
Nerdy Ogre has a good
Horizon is a brilliant movie, and that one is. It's not quite sci-fi horror; it's horror, and it's also sci-fi. But
Nerdy Ogre has a good question in the chat. I think, what monster has the safest backstory?
The safest backstory.
What does it mean to be safest? Safest.
I think. Yeah. Like I guess the monster came from the safe. Like it didn't have to suffer to become a monster. I guess the Blob, maybe he just showed up. He hit the earth and all the boredom's done now.
Oh wait, it was the saddest. Not the
Oh,
safest.
the saddest. Oh, that's better. Saddest backstory.
Frankenstein?
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Probably.
Frankenstein, yeah. And especially the book version. Because the book version is so different.
Yeah,
like,
that's-
he's not
an
made out of
abandoned
dead
child.
people and things like that. Yeah, like, it's a
He's an
very...
abandoned child.
Did you guys enjoy the version of Frankenstein in Penny Dreadful?
I did not see it. I've heard good things about Penny Dreadful in general.
I was not
Not
thrilled
really.
with
Yeah,
it.
I wasn't very impressed.
To me, that was not Frankenstein.
He looked like
Core-
Meatloaf. The monster looked like Meatloaf.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
Meatloaf.
Yeah, I love Meatloaf, but he's not the Frankenstein monster. Like, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Nice.
That's a great video, consequently. Yeah. Oh, well, and Minnie Warmutt has a good one. He says, when you say sci-fi horror, I say Life Force. And to that, I say, you get your Captain Picard, you get your naked, mute French girl. What is wrong with that movie? What is wrong with that movie? I ask you.
That's true. So, Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. So, yeah, here we get again. You could argue it's an intersection of science fiction and horror because what Mary Shelley was trying to talk about was the scientific investigative spirit of the day, right?
Yeah.
And it just happened that the Baron von Frankenstein was researching the issue of how do we deal with the problem of death. And
to be fair, it is Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Nice young Frankenstein reference. I
I
love
love that movie.
Very
Yeah,
special book.
that's great.
Well, that does lead me to a good question for you guys. In the movie Young Frankenstein, when he says his name is Frankenstein, Igor is like, "You're having me on." And it's only after that he asks him what his name is, and he says Igor to correct his pronunciation. The question is his name actually Igor, or is he just trolling Frankenstein because he's such a ponce? because
he's
there's a
trolling.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot of evidence for that.
And
throughout
and
the
uh,
whole
and
movie.
and rest in peace, Terry Garr. She passed away, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah, I heard that. Man, she was a gorgeous woman. She was in a lot of great movies too. But yeah, hey, hey, rolling the hay.
So
Oh,
So
we
yeah,
got
what's our
Role-playing
next
game.
question, Sylvia?
I'm going to throw
Role-playing
another
game,
question.
perhaps.
Yes. Role-playing games, yes. No, wait, I actually have, what?
Hit us with the
What's your
tough.
first experience playing our TTRPG?
Oh,
Call of
What was it?
Cthulhu, 1982.
Yeah,
No, I know that one. It was Call of Cthulhu. In fact, I still have the box set that I picked up at a place in Louisville,
Nice.
Kentucky called Those Crazy Games. The original
Nice.
first edition Call of Cthulhu.
nice.
That was my first experience of
The
playing
first
role-playing.
version of Call of Cthulhu I got was the UK version from Games Workshop, and it is gorgeous.
Oh,
But yeah, and I didn't know it was from the UK until well after. But my first horror RPG I bought at a place called Jordan Hobbies, and it was Chill. And when I saw that cover of the dude, in the Victorian outfit,
In the graveyard. Same
the
here, man.
graveyard, I'm like, and that game was the third. It was the third game I'd ever game mastered. I'd game mastered D&D for my friends, and then Traveler. But once I got to game mastering Chill, that's when I became a forever GM. Like I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, getting to tell a ghost story or, a spooky story over and over again. That lit me up. And
Did you
I
did you
love
pick
that
up
game.
all the supplements? Because
I did.
I
did,
still
and
have
I still have. Yeah, I was about to say I still have all of them that I got. I believe I may be missing some of the adventures.
Yep,
But,
I'm missing a couple.
yeah.
I even have the Elvira one. Who I
Yes.
used to I used to actually hang out with Cassandra every Friday night. She would hand out movie tickets for midnight at the movies. So for every Friday for 2 years, I was, hanging out with her and her chauffeur over at KZY.
As good as she looked as Elvira, she looks better not as Elvira. Man, she is a very attractive.
She was an interesting lady, but Chill was the same thing for me. I played the hell out of it. I just pulled it out of mothballs a couple of weeks ago because it's Halloween. I did a huge review on it last year. I love the system. I love the idea. We played, the most fun we actually had was playing something akin to a cross between Stranger Things and Erie, Indiana. You guys remember that show?
Yes.
Mhm.
And playing kids on bikes basically before kids on bikes was a thing. We were all in our college era, but we were playing 12 and 14-year-old kids, the only ones in the neighborhood who knew so and so was a vampire, things like that. And then we played other characters as well. But oh my god, the system, you could, right out of the box, you could literally play so many different kinds of horror games, and you didn't need any of the other supplements, but of course I had to have them.
Yeah. And if you're a big fan of the original Pace Setter system, Goblinoid Games for a brief time had the Pace Setter license, or I guess they bought the name, and they did three games that use that system. One is called Rock World, and it's about zombies. Not as big a fan of that. I'm of the belief that we're at past peak zombie, but
I
they
didn't like the
Crypt
second
World.
edition version, or I
It's
didn't like
very different, right?
Yeah, I didn't
well,
like it at all. By Mayfair Games, I only recently picked this up about a year ago, and I didn't like it. But one thing I absolutely loved was Save. I absolutely
Yes.
loved that, and I noticed that Miguel in his Gothic had a very similar thing going on. That when you get to do those kind of adventures it just opens up literally the whole world. You want to do the Mummy? Okay, off to Egypt we go. You want to do werewolves? Off to Louisiana we go. It just made it so much easier that you're part of a big group. But that's me.
No, Safe did. Yeah, it made for that boilerplate where you could just excuse these guys getting together and going wherever, right?
That's why you need in a role-playing game a faction or that will just justify the players being.
Even if not just one, maybe several ones.
Yes.
Perhaps. So you can choose the kind of faction you prefer. I usually like to have more than one, but it can be just one. It helps.
And I like the way you did it in the Gothic book. Like I said, I just finished reading it last night. I didn't give it the same treatment because I didn't have as much time to go through it, but I will if you like. It was top notch.
Well, my first was Cult.
Oh,
really?
You started a bad girl, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I started a bad girl.
I didn't
With
say
Miguel, of course.
I started with Call of Cthulhu.
I think it was, but I think when we played
Okay.
with the first horror game, it was Nocturne. No, it was Cult. I think we played Cult first.
Yes.
Cult was the game that the Satanic Panic thought D&D was.
Which is ironic because
It's
it's
a rough-
a game
it's a rough
it's built around a Gnostic premise, so
Yeah.
it's not traditional Satanism at all.
Gnosticism is Satanism's, weird, creepy uncle.
Well, that's kind of the thing. If you look at it, how do you make modern horror work? Because most people discard the supernatural out of hand, at least theoretically. So, Cult found a way to do it through reviving ancient Gnosticism, right? The world you see is not the world. You think you see the world, but what you really see is an illusion created by an evil god who controls everything. This demiurge. It works. It works as a premise, and you can go for, and it's very dark. The world of the Gnostics was dark. Now you get to darker. Darker's foundation is nihilism. It rejects Gnosticism and goes to nihilism. We've killed God effectively in practical terms. God is silent, but the evil remains. So here you have your reason why the protagonists are oftentimes so helpless in modern horror. They are trapped by their presuppositions that the supernatural isn't real, so when they encounter it, they're oftentimes helpless against it. And then the Elohim concept goes the other way. It goes with like radical predestinarianism. The God of the Gnostics, who they said was the evil God, actually is God. And if that's true, you're really in trouble. Because, the world's going to come to an end soon and you're all going to hell. So, I mean, it's modern horror is just different.
It depends on with the election.
Well, now see, that's just it. These guys are inhabited by these demons. You don't see them until, of course, they start to get old and they start kind of blabbering and biting babies. And like, how many did he bite?
I don't want to misquote you, Mark, but are you essentially saying that there were good people on both sides of the demonic rebellion? Is that what you're saying?
Nice.
There you go. So, yeah, it's interesting how modern horror gaming, I think, takes a different approach. If you look at Call of Cthulhu, it really is very much in that August Derleth mode, where you kind of take the modernist premise, which is that the real problem is that human beings are digging into things they don't understand, which you can see that in light of how the First World War would have appeared to people like Lovecraft and other people in the 20s and 30s, where you had scientists creating horrors that killed thousands upon thousands of people. It is absolutely not fair for you guys to drink when you can't share across the camera. There we go. Anyway, but Derleth kind of modified that slightly and took it more into more back in the tradition, like
yeah,
the Goth.
he also made the like Nodens and the old gods sort of the good guys, right? Like
Kind of
as
the good
much
guys.
as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were at least something that liked humans and saw them as pets, right? And,
Right. They didn't hate us, and they saw the old all the outer
and
So-
anyone that says that the dream worlds, the dreamlands is whimsical, A, hasn't read much of the stories, and B,
Right.
doesn't
The
remember
Silver
much
Key-
about their dreams.
Yeah, the Silver Key stories were some of the most terrifying if you think about it, because you really can't escape that.
Yeah, there's just some throwaway stuff in there. Like he goes to a city and they're like, "Oh, these black ships show up, and we never see the oarsmen, but they buy a bunch of slaves, but then they never seem to do anything with them. We don't know what they're doing with them. It's just implied that they feed it to whatever's down in the galley, right? And Randolph Carter's like, that's a problem for someone else, right? Like I can't solve everything in this place. It's too crazy.
Well, remember, he meets Yog-Sothoth in the form of Umar-Atawal, and Yog-Sothoth is perfectly friendly.
Yep. And
Oh,
Nyarlathotep's actually sort of decent to him, too, except he's like, yeah, I can't let you go where you're trying to go.
I have to block you.
Yeah,
I have to block you, buddy.
Sorry, buddy. I'm the bouncer,
Never mind.
But so modern horror is very different, and I think so. Here's the thing: if you play TTRPGs, what is your preference? Gothic horror or modern horror?
I like the trappings of Gothic horror, but I'm okay with modern because I don't, people always say, well, I don't like modern day because they have cell phones. I'm like, what good is a cell phone if some crap really goes down, right? And the game master's always like, well, they can't videotape the bad guy because
it's
then
like
you'd
that
have to
woman
explain why it
who's-
isn't on YouTube. And I'm like, well, just put it on YouTube and have
It's like that
everyone
woman whose
not
car
care.
was going into the river, or did you see that video? This woman's
Yeah.
in a car, and it's going into the river, and instead of trying to get out, she's on her cell phone trying to get help.
Yeah, and that is exactly the sort of things. And cell phones aren't the advantage you think they are, or they're just another visit to the library for a Call of Cthulhu character, right?
But anyway, you can just like we did in St. Cloud, in another. It's in the 90s or the 80s, so it's not that old, and there's no. cell phone.
Hey, Bill. Bill has a good channel.
So you don't need to go. It doesn't really need to be. It's still modern enough, I guess.
when Josh-
Let me
I
ask
don't
you
like
this.
I don't like modern in terms of really, really modern in terms of contemporary usually, but that's not really a problem. We can work around it.
I'm probably the weirdo here. I actually run more like D&D horror, but my favorite is actually the Old West.
Oh,
Weird
yeah.
West.
Yes, Weird West is really fun.
So two titles come to mind.
All that stuff can be there, and the best you've got is your 6-shooter.
So
You know,
two
good
titles
luck.
come to mind: Deadlands,
Mhm.
and the new one that is kind of in the Goodman Games orbit, which is Weird Frontiers.
Yeah, I didn't like that game. The professions are just too, the character classes, whatever you want to call them, are just too fantastical. At least with Deadlands, they try to keep it a little, toned down. There is some goofy stuff in it, but I would literally run like Boot Hill. Your characters are very very akin to what you'd come up with in Darker or Gothic. They don't have a lot of magic or any of that crap. They just got their wits and their 6-shooter. Good luck.
So, Bill, to your point in the chat, Bill, you're kind of right, but I have a counterpoint. Ravenloft: The Mask of the Red Death. That was Gothic horror, but it didn't have to be historically accurate because it didn't take place in our world.
Wait, Ravenloft is not our world?
Ravenloft is awesome.
But the Mask of the Red Death was Gothic Victorian horror, but it just didn't take place in our Victorian world, right?
Yeah. Well, and
So,
even
yeah.
the original story is about some fanciful kingdom. You know, it's
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I see somebody mentioning Beyond the Supernatural too. And that was a good game. It was especially a good game because for a long time there in the early '90s, late '80s, you could only get people to play Palladium. Like
You know what?
Teenage
You know what's
Mutant
great
Ninja
about-
Turtles was like
The best part of that book, though, is at the very end where they play the victim games, where you just roll up a normal guy
yeah.
or a normal girl, and kind of like what we did with Kids with Bikes, and then suddenly, Dracula's moving into your neighborhood.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought was funny is that Victor Laszlo, right, and I've always wanted to go on, when he's on and ask Kevin Simbita if this is the case. Victor Laszlo is the big supernatural guy, right? And he's in Beyond the Supernatural, but he disappears. And then later he shows up apparently in Rifts. Now, Victor Laszlo in Casablanca is said to be doing very important work, but it is never said what it is. And I always wondered if the implication of Beyond the Supernatural was that the Victor Laszlo from Casablanca is the Victor Laszlo in Beyond the Supernatural.
Well, it's a good name for a villain.
Yeah. Well, he's a good guy in Beyond the Supernatural, and
Oh, okay.
I wonder if he's supposed to be him, and then that makes Casablanca even better. And as if that were possible, somehow it gets even better.
No,
Let me explain why cell phones and other modern trappings are not a problem in modern horror, in my opinion. Because in a horror situation, they do not help you.
Yeah.
So what happens? Okay, so you've headed to, say, let me just pull into one of my more recent dark corners. You're in some broken down, abandoned section of Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana had a population nearly 200,000 people. It is now more like 75,000.
Yeah,
There are
it
over
is a
50
liminal space at this point. Yeah.
There are over 5,700 abandoned homes in Gary, Indiana. Okay. So let's say you are just kind of wandering around in those areas, looking around, So you go down there, you decide it's time for lunch, you get out your phone, you're going to get a GPS to the nearest, Arby's or whatever. Only your phone has no signal.
That's
So you
what
get out.
people. Yeah, that's people what suggest often is to just have it not work. But my idea is this: everyone plays modern horror as though the events happened last week, and you have to explain why it's not on the news now. You should always play a modern game like it's happening right now or a week from now, where the chips fall where they may. Right? If your players bone up, Gary, Indiana, gets a giant mutant creature coming out of, like don't feel constrained to explain away how this could all happen and no one notice it. Have people notice it and either not care or notice it and not be able to do anything to help you, or notice it and be too far away. I mean, there's plenty of ways to do it.
That's fair.
Kind
Kind of like Cloverfield. This is happening
it's happening.
It's either very
We're good,
recent
yeah.
or it's happening now or something like that. So
Yeah,
Shadow,
what are you gonna do about it,
choice of Shadow, what choice of cigarette are you smoking?
I roll my own.
Dude. The reason I ask is I had a character in one of the games we were playing who was like a chain smoker. So I had him smoke Camel shorts.
But this he
It
survived.
takes a real man to wrap his lips around the butt of a camel.
That or the cigarettes that come in the cans. Like the French cigarettes that come in the cans.
Yeah, no, I use pipe tobacco and I buy filter tubes and I got this machine and boom.
Neat.
I spend most people spend like $10 a pack in California. I spend $30 a month. So it's like brutally cheap.
even
see, I'm
here,
in North Carolina. We don't have that problem here.
before
Like-
vaping became really trendy, a lot of my colleagues that smoke, they started rolling their own tobacco because it was so less expensive that way.
And less chemicals.
Yeah.
Well, they say that the best cigars are those that have been rolled on the thigh of a young boy from Portugal. So
I thought you were about to say the thigh of a Cuban cigar maker, and you think
that's
of women
better.
roll-
That's even better. I should have said that.
You think of the late. Of course, then you see the pictures of the ladies who do it, and they're like somebody's
Right.
abuela.
Like
But
a
anyway.
yowza.
They're not virgins.
Yeah, well, see, that's just it. You thought that was Che Guevara on those T-shirts. Nope, that is the lady rolling the cigars. Like
Yeah.
Wah wah wah.
she has some aggressive facial hair going on.
I was just thinking of that one image from Men. I just flipped through it, and I'm just like, oh, you got-
Yeah, that game is gonna hurt you, Shadow. Like, just be ready. Just be ready.
no,
for the game.
I went and checked it out a long time ago. We're actually going to be running a game of it live at some point real soon.
Oh,
Yeah, we're looking to
Oh,
destroy
boy.
our channel. I guess I don't know.
I'll have to.
are you
tune
are
into
you going to
that.
use fill-in words like I touch him in the boo with my like, are you going to have to do that sort of thing? Like,
It's not going to actually be on my channel. I don't know who's running it yet. We're trying to get Bubba, DM Deals of Bubba, to run it, but I don't think that he's
Oh,
down for that.
would be good.
oh, yeah.
I'm sure that would be good. Yes.
Speaking of no filters on tape, he
Yeah.
he will probably do a really good job of that.
Yeah, I don't think he's down for that right now. Scheduling and grandparenting and that sort of thing. I'm definitely not going to run it because I want to play.
Yeah. Anybody that expects to have a court date in the next couple of months should not be seen playing men because it's just going to create issues. Right?
Even us, we haven't game mastered it yet.
Well, I offered to run it. I was going to
Oh.
buy a Blue Week, and I would be a
That's perfect.
feminazi game master.
I've heard that the guy that wrote Men is in witness protection off planet. That's how dangerous this game is, right?
I mean,
I-
it's just so-
I can't say it, but
I
it's
wish
very
one day you
popular
could say who wrote Man, because people
I would
would
love
say,
to
"Oh,
say it.
really?"
I've been tasked with writing an erotica story for this writers group I'm in, and I'm seriously thinking someone needs to write the antithesis to that. Women, just saying, that would probably sell like hotcakes. If you guys are familiar with Josh from Total Party Skills, I would put him
Oh.
up to the task.
I
Just
love
saying.
those games. I love those games. I pester him on his community tab, and I think he's sick of me. But those are some really cool games, and that system
little-
is really neat.
They're a little too simplistic for my tastes, but everything else is just fabulous.
But
unfortunately,
he's an interesting dude too. Yeah.
One of the
Anyone that hums their own music for their videos is a kind of guy I can dig.
I prefer
it's one of the
Roadman.
perks of moving to Texas. Sorry, we'll
You
be
know,
getting
there's
to
another-
live in the same state as him and invite him to the shop to come and play. I'll pay his cab fare, whatever it takes.
There you go. So there's another take on how to handle modern terror RPGs, which is the X-Files approach.
Yeah.
You could also call it the COVID pandemic approach. Basically, yes, I'm.
You're going to
choosing
get us
be-
remonetized, dude.
I know. I can't help myself.
This video is brought to you by Pfizer. Put it in you right now. No, seriously, it's mandatory.
I must produce my dwarf approved ranting. No, the thing is, if it's one thing to have horrific events going on, it's quite another getting anyone else to find out about it. I mean, that's kind of what happened at the end of our St. Cloud game, right?
Yeah.
Well, they say
Um,
people would rather be fooled or tricked than to be told they were fooled or tricked.
Exactly.
Yeah, apparently that's
So
that.
it makes it easy for people to cover things up. And if you assume, like, that's the whole point behind the SCP Foundation, right? If you look at the SCP Wiki and those stories, the implication is there's a powerful institution. If you've read Darker RPG, think of the Sentinel Initiative. There's a powerful organization that has a vested interest in keeping people in general from finding out about the things that go bump in the night. And as it turns out, in the real world, it's surprisingly easy to do that.
Yeah.
You just have to have power and money.
I mean, think of the most major crime you can think of that occurred to a presidential candidate recently, and think about how long it lasted in the news cycle.
Yeah.
Minutes.
You know, you can bury anything with enough Taylor Swift. You can bury the whole world.
They buried John F. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, they said that they were going to release that, Trump, in an interview, and then he said that some very nice people, very good people came to him and said, "Don't do that, Mr. President, for these reasons," and convinced him not to do it. And which, you know, that's weird. I've heard a really good theory about it, that it was an accident. You know, that one of the people in the motorcade shot him, and that's why they're covering it up, because this guy is still alive, and they figure that people will hound him to death if, you know, he's still alive and people don't know about it. That's an interesting theory. It is the most benign conspiracy theory I've heard about it.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, they say that could be number one on the list of the family jewels, the only one that was never disclosed, which was the real story of who assassinated him, and it turned out to be us, or to be more precise, our own government.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bill, we have talked about that,
Yes.
but we don't have to stop talking
The
about it.
first one
Not
that
the
you
favorite.
used.
Yeah, the first one.
Yes, the first one, not the favorite.
Good point.
No, the
I
first
expect you
one-
all to say darker gothic, no pressure. No, I'm just joking. That's
Well,
why
I
I
do
didn't
love
ask
darker.
it. But
I,
Bill did
I
ask.
would love to, guys, but I have yet to play it. I just reviewed it. I didn't get an actual chance to play it, but I have Wednesdays open. Just saying.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that my favorite horror RPG is Toon.
Is what?
No, that is not. That is no.
Did you just say tune?
Toon.
Oh my
That
god!
that is edgy. You are the
I would-
edgy.
I would say my favorite horror RPG is emotionally still chill because of having the good memories it had. But I do like darker. I suspect I'm going to like Gothic even more, because it's gonna that Hammer horror is kind of the sweet spot for me. So yeah, I think yeah, I don't feel bad about plugging your game, but
No,
yeah,
I
somewhere
was
between
like
chill and
Corman.
Gothic. Yeah.
The Corman Poe films that they reference in there as well. But remember, I brought up Dark Shadows. And to me, if you're going to do Gothic and something that's even reasonably modern, Dark Shadows would probably be your source of inspiration. There's a perfect example. They're in the modern world. I mean, remember, this came out in '66, and it was about a contemporary event, right, from the fictionally. And yet there you are. They have vampires in Collingsport, Maine. And nobody, I mean, yeah, there are people who know, but nobody really knows, because nobody outside the town believes them.
And I think Dark Shadows and Hammer and to a certain degree, and this is not horror, but Batman the Animated Series, they all do this thing where it's kind of in this time, but there's all these anachronisms that no one cares about, right? Like in the Hammer horror films, Van Helsing will be in his Deerstalker and his Victorian wear, and then he'll go home and take a phone call and then get on his dictaphone, and no one bothers to try to pin down what year any of this is occurring in, right? It's just sort of occurring in this place that has these tropes, and they just do whatever works, and because they're hitting on all cylinders, you don't question it, right? Like you don't try to explain why people that are obviously in the 40s have a computer in Batman the Animated Series, right?
That's actually a really good reference. The early Detective Comics were very much in line with that, if you think about it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of horror in the original, the early Batman.
Yeah, and
there was-
Gotham is supposed to be a Gothic city. It is the Gothic aspect of New York turned into a fictional city, and because it works so well with that, with there being a Batman and the dark colors and the Art Deco and all that just gives it that weight, and I think that was DC's great genius was it divided New York into Metropolis and Gotham. It showed different aspects of the same city, as though they were just completely separate places.
For me, my favorite is probably I had the most fun with Chill, like a lot of us here. But there's this game called Scythonian Stars, which is Call of Cthulhu in space, in the far future, and you can get it for free on the high, not really the high seas. You can just look it up and you can find the free PDF. And I just got sucked into that. I've been looking for it for about 4 years now. The only place you can get a hardback copy of it is on Drive-Thru, and it's $69.99. It's been out of print since 2009. Okay, and if you guys know Drive-Thru, almost everything there
What
is.
you were mentioning is a traveler game.
Yes,
That,
yes,
yeah, okay.
it is. And it's all you need to play. It's got all the traveler rules baked into it, and it's just.
I never ran it, but we do have it, and
The name, yeah, we have it, right? Because the name sounds familiar.
the other one, like
Somewhere behind me.
Fulltech as well.
You guys are lucky to have a copy of that. I just can't shell out that kind of money for a book, especially when I got the PDF for free. Every couple of months, I check it out to see if it's gone down in price. It's got to be the most expensive book in all of Drive-Thru, as far as I can tell.
Really?
70 bucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
For the PDF, yeah.
yeah,
No,
PDF
not the PDF, not the
Well,
print on demand.
plus.
Oh.
Yeah.
How thick is it? Is it?
It's about 300 pages,
Oh, wow. Mm.
but it's so well written. The flavor
Is it
text.
hand illuminated by monks somewhere in the Capuchin Mountains or something? What?
I
So is
don't
it
know,
based
but-
on the Cepheus
Very
engine? Is
strange,
that what it
right?
is?
Yeah.
No, it's full Traveler. It's
Okay.
Mongoose Traveler. It's
But,
ab-
I think there are several versions of this game. There's
I think the one I found is Cthulhu Tech. That is
Yeah.
a different one. Yes.
Oh,
Void is also, I think, it
Yes, Void.
uses the same setting, but different
But
rules.
that-
oh yeah, yeah.
The Void is also free in PDF, I think.
So that brings us back to Wretched Space,
hmm
which you can definitely use to play a horror in space game.
Oh yeah, and Orbital Decay as well.
Yeah, there's
good
a
name. It's a really good name.
that is a good name. It's a Cepheus engine. There's a Cepheus engine based one, which is basically the first edition of Mongoose Traveler. That was their SRD, was the Cepheus engine. Solo Games has something called Hostel.
Mm-hmm.
HOSTILE.
Yes, we also have right here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
okay.
It is really. It is 80s sci-fi horror. Yeah, it is. It is right in that wheelhouse,
Yeah,
and it is very
Alien
fun game.
and Blade Runner and all that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
never
really
ran
well
it, but I did read the book and.
And it's got a companion game that's more cyberpunk called Zaibatsu. It's like the prequel to Hostel, and yeah, both are very good. Those are games do good stuff.
I'm going to tell you all a secret. I think Miguel started writing role-playing games, so he would stop buying role-playing games.
Has it worked? Has it worked?
Did it work?
Yes, it worked. I can say I never bought anything else, but I haven't.
Well, I
I
bought
think
some things after, but
Yeah,
not
some
yet.
Lamentations and.
Schultz,
But just
Hyperborea.
yeah,
Well,
we bought some
Schultz is
things people that
pure
we know, but just that.
Buying
And-
chalk books is not buying games. It is buying a lifestyle. You are
There you
you
go.
are
I
buying in.
couldn't agree more. Salt
You
is
are
one of the
buying
greatest.
into just a joy de vivre that you can only get from Vengeance.
Yeah, it was basically that. We haven't purchased anything from a commercial publisher anymore.
And Venture has not said this, but I feel like if anyone sends in a $5 or greater super chat, Venture will just give them something. Like, again, he has not told me that, but I just feel like it's something he would do.
Yeah, he sent me quite a few things over the years. Um, I was so glad when he changed his course.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that he pulled back from
I was
the edge of Clavenless as well. Yeah.
something on Twitter today. Uh, maybe their show is coming back.
Inappropriate characters.
From the characters, yes.
Oh, to
I
YouTube
think
or
it
to
was
Rumble?
Ryan. I don't know. It was something that
Is it because they saw how bad Pundit is at like doing
And he
technical
felt bad.
stuff?
It's like,
Like,
oh, poor
Save
Pundit.
him from his boomerism.
I'm not sure. Perhaps. Well, I watched his interview with
Macri.
yeah, the second
alright.
one. The first one, no.
Macri.
Yeah. With Alex Macri or Macris. or whatever.
It's Macris is how he
Macris,
said
yeah.
it. So yeah.
That one was interesting. The first one, not really, but yeah, with Macris, I liked it.
Yeah, I think the Mystara, the Mr. Welsh is really if you're a Mystara fan, he's he is the guy. But yeah, he's very focused. But he does what he does very well. So
Yeah, for me, it wasn't really not interesting. And with Macris or Macri, he was addressing several different subjects, not just acts or whatever, but just stuff. And it was an interesting,
I always like when they talk about stuff.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
stuff.
general stuff, not just
yeah,
just one game. It gets kind of boring sometimes, but if you're talking about different things, it will be more interesting.
Now, how much input do you guys have into what Pundit does in the Pundit Files?
Zero.
Zero.
I was about to say maybe he's listening and he's just too shy to post. In the chat,
Yeah,
but,
of course.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's very shy.
and it's too late to cash in on the Halloween, but a horror tips for playing Invisible College would probably not be a bad idea. I think there's a lot of horror suggested in it, especially with the people that are like bugs and whatnot. But yeah, I think veering it in that direction or having something because I loved the 30s, the Dirty 30s, Invisible College thing, and yeah, I feel like there's more add-ons for that game, and it feels kind of funny saying that because it is like a thick book full of stuff. But yeah,
It's the underdog. I think it said it's sold a lot less, so it's not doing a lot of things for it. Although
Actually,
for me, it's one of the most interesting.
when we was talking to Macri, it was Macri is saying that it is Pundit's favorite game. His favorite game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
yeah, and he pointed out it would make a great TV show, right?
Yeah, it would.
But Pundit's two greatest games, to my opinion, is No Murdered, which is just the greatest and most. It's an expose of the real conspiracy of gnomes that is sitting out there waiting to kill us all. And I'm surprised that he has not been silenced by Little Gnome yet. But the other game is Lords of Olympus. I love that game, and it's open source, so eventually I will write something for it. But
is
or
that
open license, I should
the
say.
story game or something like that? Almost story game.
Well, it's basically it's the I call them amber locks. It is the amber system applied to Greek myth, and yeah, so it's just right in my wheelhouse, and it fixes some of the things that made Amber challenging to run in some
Amber
cases.
was one of the greatest role playing games of all time, and I don't say that just because Roger.
I played a lot of Amber in my day. Yeah, I probably played more Amber in actual playtime than any other game at this point.
It's the only game you can literally play anywhere. You know what I mean?
I never played Amber, and before I thought it was strange because it will be like a story game. But after seeing some people ditching on Amber, I say, oh, maybe it's not that bad.
It is
because I'm that type of person. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely a high trust game, but with the right game master, there's a lot more mechanically going on, but you just don't see it, right?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Our dear departed Shauner, had he ever read the Amber books, would have thought it was the greatest role playing game of all time. When you're talking 4D, that sort of thing, because there's never a reason to discuss mechanics in that game because they're so well baked into it. But you do have to be a fan of, the Amber novels. You have to know them really well for it to work, and that's the biggest, buy into that game. It's very.
And I came at it weirdly because I got the game first because I'm like, Diceless RPG sounds cool, right? I'll get it. And I started reading it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need to know these books, right? And so I just started getting the books, and that got me into Zelazny in a big way. And
Zelazny was the coolest thing.
Yeah, it was a win-win on both counts, right? I got to meet Wujkik once when he was at Dragon Con. Oh, no, I met him twice. And, we sat with him and yacked while he was waiting for his taxi to the airport. And he was just the coolest guy. And he was telling us how Palladium got started. And it's the age-old story of someone got white box D&D and no one could figure out how to play it. And so they ended up making their own house rules, and that became their system, right? So that apparently happened about 13 times across the nation, and various game companies got started.
I don't doubt it a bit. Roger.
It makes me wonder if White Box was better written, if other RPGs would ever have happened. Right? I mean, eventually, right? You would hope. But
I recently just read White Box, just last month again, and it blew me away how close it was to AD&D. There's very little difference, and that's my game of choice is AD&D.
But a lot of it's implied, right? Like it's like watching the new Doom movies. Like when you're reading it, you're like, if I had not been playing for decades, would I know what in the hell they're talking about, right? And you're like, I'm not sure, because I do know what they're talking about. So it's hard to put yourself, like you can't see Psycho the way people saw Psycho back in the day, because that Janet Leigh dies in the first reel, and everyone knows that. So there's no way to get that surprise factor of the the big draw getting killed in the first reel, and it's just hard to know how that game would look if you had never played a game like that before.
Guys, I'm gonna have to cut out. I actually have a show in 45.
Yeah, we probably will go. We are going for 2 hours, so we're probably gonna cut off in a bit. Thank you, Shadow.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Good to see you, man.
You too, guys. You guys know to find me in Discord. Miguel and Sylvia, get a hold of me because I got some questions about the upcoming stuff that's going on with the Game Jam, etc.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on board, but I really do. I should have chatted 15 minutes ago. I'm hanging out with you guys.
Take care, man. Happy Halloween.
Bye.
So
Bill, I think I know this name, but
I don't know the name, but I checked it, so it's definitely French.
Yeah, Hurlement.
Oh, the Hurlement. Is that how you say it?
Hurlement, probably. I'm
And
not
that
really
means
sure.
what? It means
I don't know.
thrown rocks.
Actually, I don't know. I know how to pronounce it, but I don't know what it means. Let me check it.
Oh
It
wait,
means hurlement.
hurla means metal, right? Like hurlant, metal hurlant. Oh, well, no, that's heavy.
Screaming metal. That's literally what it
Yeah,
means. Screaming
yeah.
metal.
So what? Yeah, what do you think that means? If only we had French speakers.
So metal hurlant. Well, of course, that's the
Yeah.
French version of.
Well, and there are some French games that manage to, wasn't Cult originally French? Is that true, or am I misremembering
Sorry,
that?
what did you?
Was Cult originally a French game?
Swedish.
Oh, okay. Um,
There are a few games that I can't remember.
oh, I'm
Anything.
thinking of In Nomine was
Oh, yeah,
originally
that one.
French. Yeah.
That one is yes, definitely that. Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
think there are more. Well, there was a time when Cult was French, but because a French company purchased it, I
is
think
it
in third edition it was French.
Jeu de Dakar or whatever it's called? The card
It was
games.
Septième Cercle.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps it belonged to Jeu de Cartes. I'm not sure. Maybe.
France really liked the Amber books too. So when the Amber books came out, they made a set of trump cards as tarot cards and got this artist to do it. And I've got a set of those, and they're gorgeous. I mean, so, and apparently Amber really popular in Russia because when I was younger, I wrote on the Amber mailing list a million years ago when mailing lists were a thing. I wrote a satire series, and one day I'm Googling myself and found that someone had translated it into Russian, and I'm like, wow, that's bizarre, and yet kind of cool.
There are strange things. I remember some games were very popular in Italy, and those games weren't really popular anywhere else. Like Mutant Chronicles.
Were they mostly about the Roman Empire?
No, not really. Well, maybe those, but those were probably Italian games. But I mean, some American games that were popular in Italy, and some were popular in Brazil and some other places. But strange things, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't guess it. So,
Well, to tie us back to horror RPGs, the most popular role playing game in Japan is Call of Cthulhu.
Mhm.
yeah,
And the reason for that,
Typical.
the reason for that is because they do things like at the independent comic places. There are people that will sell comics, and this group of role players basically would use the transcriptions of their play sessions. They would put them together and print them out and sell them along with the comics, and they called them replays. And so people would buy these, because hey, if you're into comics, you're probably into people having weird adventures, right? and it is like a transcriptionist did it. Like if you tell a joke or you make a bad roll or they write it down, right? And so people liked those. And so this guy was like, well, we're running Call of Cthulhu, so I want to do that, but I don't want to make a comic or anything. So he used a dating sim software to just make the characters popping up and talking to each other. So he used the dialogue generator from a dating sim to basically, be all of his players talking to each other and NPCs. And he put that up on their version of YouTube, and they became really popular. And then people were like, hey, what are they doing and how do I get to do this? So it was kind of the Matthew Mercer effect, except with Call of Cthulhu.
okay.
So
How
that is
can we
why
do
it's so
that?
popular.
How can we do that in China? That's
Or India.
a big question.
Yeah, once upon a time, I was like, why do you think India, do you think there's an RPG that would light them up
Heroes of
and
Indra.
get them excited? That would be a great market too, right? And, if Arrows of Indra didn't do it, I don't know. And maybe no one wants to play their
You
own
need a
stuff.
Bollywood
Right?
the role playing game.
Yeah. So what we need to do is find out what really, and I'm guessing, it'd be something like RRR or, some of the, look to their movies and stuff to see what's really popular. Make a game that does that. Right?
Or in Africa, maybe. Well, Africans.
I think Child Soldier the RPG is still super super popular there, and it's unfortunate.
The Lord's Army RPG.
I think we should think about closing up. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. It's getting a little bit late here.
You
Okay.
guys are after midnight, right?
Close to midnight.
Not yet, but it's
Close to midnight.
Yeah, close
Yes.
to midnight.
You got to stay till midnight, right? To light the candles and
The
Yeah.
candle is
Things like
already
that.
lit, as you can
It's-
see.
oh
It's
man,
there.
you started the ritual early, Sylvia.
No,
all our
Miguel.
planning.
It's me. It's for Miguel, not me.
Oh,
But how is it called? Star of the. It's a
What?
Christmas candle.
Oh, it's a Christmas. It smells like Christmas.
Yes. It smells like cinnamon.
Yeah.
you guys have
Okay,
a little
so-
wretched advent calendar somewhere, right?
Do you have a last question for us
Yeah, one more question. Give us a good one to go out on.
to close?
Okay. Let me.
Here's one. Where did you bury the body of the player that you killed, in your RPG session?
The
Because
play-
everyone has had at least one player. Right? We've all been there, right?
Yeah,
Mistakes
yeah.
happen. You have to go out to the desert. Is it just me?
We've buried one on social media.
Bill Allen has confessed by saying that VentureCon 4 is it. we agreed never to talk about what happened at VentureCon.
That's what kind of happened in that movie. What was it called? Very Bad Things or something like that?
Yeah. But she wakes up, right? They're like, oh no.
Yeah, they accidentally
Okay,
killed-
I'm going to ask you a silly question.
Okay.
Have you ever tried any Halloween-related superstition or ritual, like doing a seance or using a Ouija board?
Oh, like a real one?
Yeah.
No.
Did you ever try? Did you ever do any of those stupid things for real?
Well, I take that back. I have used a Ouija board, but it was just to screw with people, right? Like there's always somebody in the Ouija board that is pushing it towards, something, right? And
I never
Yeah.
tried it.
Well, we have a Ouija board there, but
Yes,
we never
yes.
used it. Yes,
Never used it.
I went to use it to scare the crap out of my nieces and my sister.
Okay, there's a
Yeah, the
question
Ouija board was a big thing in the 70s.
from
Yeah.
Josh. Best horror gaming moment while gaming? I think I had some, yeah, but it was a long time ago when I was starting probably game mastering, and we still had some. We spent a lot of time preparing and all that, so it was. I don't
Well,
remember anything.
I
in
had
particular.
one a long time ago, but more recent than that. When we played the first introductory adventure to Mutant Chronicles, it was called Trafalgar's.
Yeah,
The name was wrong, so it was not.
it wasn't Rafael.
But it was because I hadn't. It was a one shot to introduce people to the game. I hadn't read the rules properly. Neither did Miguel. So and it was a 2D20 game. So I almost died. So it was really well. It was a good, in spite of everything. It was a very not like the other. It was a very horror filled adventure.
Yeah.
And my character was really, I had to run out of there in panic.
Well,
'Cause
this is
my character was almost dying. So she was the cop investigating and she had to run out of there because I didn't know the rules properly. That also didn't help.
yeah.
But it
So-
was a very atmospheric. There was an old lady petting a cat that was decomposing, not the cat, her.
probably the truly spookiest RPG experience I had was I was a player, and one of my longtime gaming buddies, Alex, was running a Jovian Chronicles game where we were investigators that were sent to track down a guy who was basically violating the treaties, and investigating. He was doing stuff with nanotech he shouldn't be doing, right? And it was a threat, and so we were like UN agents that were going in to take him down. And he just played it so well. He's got a singer voice, and he uses it. He uses his voice really well to like set up the tension. And we get to a scene where we had forgotten we sent some NPCs to do something, and he's building up the tension of like, oh, we get inside this place, and we thought that he had sealed himself in, but we see that whoever was in the station was actually trying to keep something from getting out, and we're like, that's not good. And then we hear this thing going on, and all of us just look down at our character sheets immediately. We're like, we go into combat mode. We start, oh, my character's got their gun at, we're immediately just spooked at what just happened, and we go into full terror mode. And then we find out that it was the other team breaching a door, just like we told them to. And so it was a good squeeze release moment, but it did show that he had ramped the tension up without us noticing, to the point that just one thing happening sent us all into these, spasms of preparedness to get for a big fight. So yeah, that was the best ramp up.
So for me, it was running a session of Call of Cthulhu years ago. We were in the basement of an old college building summer. We happened to be because we had been doing just one of these summer college things that they used to have where you'd have like a bunch of people get together, they do some conference or something. There was almost nobody there. And we were playing at like 11 p.m. at night. And the whole building, except for this basement, was dark. It was the atmosphere that made the game. It was just so creepy. As we were getting into the game, you had people, we'd hear something. It's just an old building, it creaks. We'd hear a creak and everybody would jump a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's like I've always thought, if only we could run our games with the correct environment, the correct atmosphere,
I'm very guilty of ruining it. Like in most horror games, my first reaction is to diffuse tension with humor, and so that's what I'll do. And then I end up, trying to drag people out with me. And so yeah, we jokingly say I'm the greatest game master ever, but I feel like I'm probably the worst player to have at your table because I am nothing but a bowl full of distractions sometimes.
After some
this
time,
is where you're supposed to say no, Sylvia.
No, I was saying
that
not anymore. I think that's something that you probably worry about when you're starting. But after a few years, it's just, if it's fun, it's fun. Even if it's horror.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fun. So.
Well, and when they do that, when I'm playing with a group that's big into deep immersion, I will turn it off consciously. But yeah, it's probably not my best play, but yeah, and certainly like Mark was saying, if you've got the lights down and whatnot, it puts you in that mind, and then I'll behave better probably.
And
so what I'm saying is I need to turn the lights out whenever I play.
Yeah, that's hard to do online. So doing it online, it's probably, if it's fun, it's fun. Never mind the atmosphere.
Oh my God! But you don't play for fun. You play to win. How dare you to have fun? That's not the right way to play.
Hey, you can win at D&D, but you cannot win at Wretched. You just can't.
Exactly. No. But you can have fun. It's like, oh my God, fun. Doing this for fun.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe that's the reason we play. Yeah, maybe. Oh, I don't
Well, see,
Yeah,
I
What
will
kind of
say,
lower creature are you?
know. I'm wrong.
I
Perhaps.
will say that Sylvia runs good horror games because we know she's a killer GM and that our lives are just tenuous at all times. Like,
I think that's a reputation that I don't really, yeah, because only one person lost a fear point on this. Just because Miguel's character lost his hands on bastards, and
I
Pedro's
have
character
noticed,
died
yeah,
and he had to play again. That was just on one time.
I have noticed that we have the designated sick house character that like will just go and kill an NPC, right? Like it's just like it's time, and it's never the guy you think it's going to be at the beginning of the scenario.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing. So who's gonna die? I like plot twists. That is a thing on the things that I
Yeah.
write. I like plot twists. It's like, oh, this looks like the bad guy, but no, he's not going to be the bad guy. He's going to be killed.
Yeah, if you can predict
But
what the
Miguel-
players are going to do, then probably
No,
the
that
players
one-
aren't as
that one was
engaged
not,
as you want
yeah.
them to be, right?
The other one, so in the other one, Thomas Dead is in the book. The other one, no. Miguel just decided to fuck up.
Mhm.
He decided to put a bag on his head and go
That's what I
right
always-
off the boat.
He can
I
never
see.
get the hang of Thursdays, right?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you guys have a good Halloween. I know you're trying to get us to the end here,
Mhm.
and we've got a few folks in chat. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully, everyone got a bunch of candy.
Thank you, guys. This was a good hour. I don't know if it's because Halloween, but this is a good idea for the stream. Maybe in a couple of months, as we bring more people on to talk about
Yeah. Other things.
something random. Yes, not Halloween,
Not
not
all.
Christmas. That's not a good theme. Well, we could do something like this for the kids game. Have
Yeah,
people
when-
talk about childhood nostalgia.
Yeah, I think that could work. Yes.
This
There
could
are-
be a Christmas special or a
Mhm.
holiday special.
Yeah. So
For those of you that have children at home and they've trick or treated, if you've got time, now is the time to go buy a bunch of junior mints and switch them out with whatever they actually retained, and just you got to keep a poker face. Like, what are you talking about, Timmy? You always had junior mints in that bag, and he's like, no. That's the true horror of Day of the Dead. It's the junior mints we had all along. Right?
okay. So thanks for coming and thanks for
See you
watching.
next time.
See you next
Stay
time.
wretched.
Bye bye.